You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. We'll call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, December 9th, 2021. I'll introduce members of our commission and staff. To my far right, we have Commission Member Joe Chadwick. Next to Joe, we have Commission Member Joe Viuzzo. Next to Joe, we have our new alternate member, Sharon Hutner. Did I get that correct? Correct. Excellent. Next to Sharon, turn in the corner, we have Commission Member Fred Russo. Next to Fred, Commission Member Paul Higgins. To my left, we have Commission Member Marcy Pelusi, and next to Marcy, we have Commission Member Massimo Ligori. Our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Over in the corner, next to Harry, is our assistant planner, Evan Brining, and I think Michelle Martin is away making notes to do the minutes, looking remotely. I am Chuck Anders, our chair. And I'll ask our secretary to read the notice of public hearings.
The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, December 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in person at the Branford Fire Headquarters, 45 North Main Street, Branford, Connecticut, to consider the following. 1. Application number 21-10.3, PDD Master Plan Amendment Modification located at 26 Cherry Hill Road, Cherry Hill Estates, LLC, care of Joe Manieri, applicant and owner. Item number 2, application number 21-10.4, a special exception modification for grading, section 6.8, located at 26 Cherry Hill Road, Cherry Hill Estates, LLC, care of Joe Manieri, applicant and owner. Item number 3, application number 21-10.5, site plan modification for multifamily housing located at 26 Cherry Hill Road, Cherry Hill Estates, LLC, care of Joe Manieri, applicant and owner. And lastly, item number 4, application number 21-11.3, a zoning regulation amendment to establish a 12-month moratorium for cannabis establishments, Planning and Zoning Commission applicant. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard and written communications will be received. Copies of the applications are on file in the Planning and Zoning Office at the Planning and Zoning Department located at 1019 Main Street in Branford.
Thank you, Marcy. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings. The applicant will go first. You step forward, grab a microphone, or use a podium, make a presentation. After the applicant goes, we'll open it up for public. We ask that, again, you come forward, state your name and address for the record. You can use a microphone. Well, actually, before we ask the public, we typically turn it over to commission members and staff for a summary of the staff report and questions from commission members, and then we ask the public to come forward and make your comments. After the public portion, we allow the applicant to respond to any of the public comments or questions from commission members, and we may or may not close a public hearing depending on how things go. It's not unusual to have a public hearing extend over one or more hearings. With that, we'll start, and we also have copies of staff reports in the agenda up here in the front if you'd like to get that. Our first item, public hearing item, is actually number 1. It's Robert Caldera, applicant, 12 Sunrise Cove Camp. Harry, my understanding is the applicant was thinking of withdrawing this application. What's the current status of that?
My understanding is he's submitted withdrawal in writing this afternoon.
Yeah, the applicant's attorney withdrew the application this afternoon.
Okay, so item number 1, if you're here on the 12 Sunrise Coast Camp, we had opened that public hearing. The applicant has withdrawn that application, so that's not going forward this evening. That brings us then to items number 2 and 3, and that's Nick Magnota, applicant, and John and Rachel Borseal, and attorney Joseph Porto, owners. This is 54 and 60 North Main Street. That's a special exception for the car wash and special exception for grading. And I understand Mr. Preddy, your engineer, is at the wetlands meeting right now. Do you want to go forward at this time, or would you like to wait a bit, Mr. Porto?
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Joe Porto, represent the applicant. Happy holidays, everybody. Yes, we would like to pass if possible. Mr. Preety is at the Wetlands Commission. Hopefully we'll be back real soon, so if that's okay with you guys, we'll wait a little while.
Okay, because there's a wetlands meeting going on at the same time for connection with this application. One of the reasons we continued this hearing is to keep open to get comments from wetlands if there were any. So we will defer that one for a little bit until the engineer who's appearing at the wetlands hearing remotely, my understanding, is going to come over here. So then we'll move on to item number 4, which is BC Investment Property 175 Cherry Hill subdivision, an 11-lot re-subdivision. This, my understanding, this applicant has requested that we opened this matter and we continued it, and the applicant has requested that, this is also before wetlands, that we continue this matter without testimony. Is that correct, Harry?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have email communication from Jesse Langer, attorney for the applicant. They're requesting that the public hearing, which was open on the 18th of November, be further continued without any testimony at the January 6th meeting. They also are offering a 65-day time extension to allow that to happen.
Okay, so that's item number 4. That was the 11-lot re-subdivision on 175 Cherry Hill Road. If you're here on that, that matter is going to be continued to our January 6th meeting right here. So that brings us now to item number 5 and 6 and 7, all of which are the Sterling Ridge application, 26 Cherry Hill Road, Cherry Hill Estates LLC. That's a PDD master plan amendment and modification, a special exception modification for grading, and a site plan modification for multifamily residential. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that one?
Yeah, right about there is good. Yeah, I'd say probably with the camera. If you want to come up, right in front. Sorry. Either one is live, yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Bernard Pellegrino. I'm an attorney with the Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven, and I represent the owner and applicant in regard to 26 Cherry Hill Road. This is an application which I know you're familiar with based on our many years of appearing here to secure our approvals, and we did so, I think, most recently about in 2020. Construction began subsequently. And the good news was that on that slope behind the first 4 units that we had much concern about during the public hearing about blasting and the rock. The good news is when they began the site work, the rock was such that minimal blasting was required. They were able to reduce or take down that slope with machines, and so blasting was minimized, and that was good news. The bad news was that because that slope was approved at a 1-to-1 slope, because we anticipated it to be bedrock, it would allow us to slope it to that degree. When we found that it was rock that could be ripped and or earth that obviously you could not stabilize to the 1-to-1 slope, we needed to revise the slope in the back to lay it back at a 3-to-1, I believe, right, John? And we have revised the plans accordingly. to do it to that slope and hold the point at the top of the hill where we had the conservation easement beginning. As you may recall, we have to utilize a retaining wall structure along the back slope, which Mr. Malone will show you in more detail in a minute. So that's really the only change. It's the slope behind those first 4 units. Instead of a 1-to-1 rock slope, it is now a 3-to-1 slope, which is in accordance with the regs, with a retaining wall. Yesterday, our design team appeared before the Town Plan Review Board to present the change to that. It was a mandatory referral. My understanding is they approved it. They are requiring a kind of a nickel decorative block finish to the retaining wall, which I think John has a photo of. He'll show you in a moment. And so we're here for a minor amendment to the PDD master plan, to the special exception, and to the site plan for the limited purpose that I just described, and that Mr. Malone will give you more details on in a moment. If you have any questions for me, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Mr. Pellegrini.
Thank you. My name is John Malone, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, representing SLR Consulting for the applicant. This is a copy of the...
I'm not sure the people in the back...
Yeah, maybe you hold that microphone a little bit closer to you.
Better now?
That's better.
My name is John Malone, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, representing the applicant, working with SLR Consulting.
If any member would like to take a look, you can just feel free to come up on this side and take a look if anyone is interested.
This essentially is the approved plan that you have in front of you, with the exception of the minor modification that's occurring behind these units. If you recall, there was an access off Cherry Hill Road with 2 garage under units on the right-hand side when you came in. We have this knoll that Attorney Pellegrino referred to in the center portion of the site that was being retained as part of the original approved plan, and we were excavating into that down around elevation 40 when you come into the site, up a few feet when you come into here, up to around, I think it was 48 or so at the bottom of these, up to around 58 to 60 at the finished floor over here, and up to a high point around 68 at the knoll. So if you were to drive by this site right now, you see a significant excavation here. What we're talking about putting a retaining wall on is just the remains of that after you construct these units, which are garage under again, construct the foundations, which in a sense become retaining walls, and then fill back behind them. So the end area that we're dealing with here is averaging from about 6 feet or 5 or 6 feet in height from the grade behind the unit to about 8 or 9 feet in height maximum behind the unit. It's not a big wall. It may look big in the field right now, but once you fill back in over here, it's not a dramatic area that we're dealing with. Again, from elevation 68 down to around 60 in the worst case scenario behind the units. We wanted to maintain a nice open area behind the units for the use of the residents, but also for emergency access, etc. So we didn't want to slope that down too far and take away the backyards. So by going from a 1-to-1 slope here to a 3-to-1 slope, we would have lost much of the backyards if we had done that. So we proposed a small section of wall, just 3 feet high, so you'd have a 3-to-1 slope behind it, then a 3-foot wall, so that you maintain a good backyard, at least 15 feet behind these units, more behind those 2 units on the right. And if you want to pass this around, this will give you a graphic sense of about the size of wall we're talking about. It's not a big dramatic wall. So you have the fill being placed back behind these units, a 3-foot wall and then about an average of anywhere from, well, 2 feet to say 5 feet of sloping area at 3-to-1 slope above that wall that would be vegetated. And by doing that, we maintain the limits of construction that were originally proposed. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions at this time? If not, Harry, do you want to review the staff report with us?
Sure. As was mentioned by Attorney Pellegrino, there is a lot of process in terms of the number of approvals that need to be amended. I think it was alluded to that we have a PDD master plan approval. There's a special exception approval under section 6.8 for the grading, and there was a PDD site plan approval for the final site layout design, as well as the design of the units going in. In the approval of all those, the granting of all those approvals, there were conditions related to the rock wall. It wasn't completely clear in terms of, and this is not any fault of the applicant, I mean, you really couldn't do a lot of investigation of that knoll to see what was under it, to be absolutely sure it was going to be exposed rock that you could stabilize at a very steep slope. So there was a condition, several conditions, as I mentioned, on the approvals to require them to come back if they needed to modify that design, and they would not be able to establish the rock wall. So the other issue that was present is, even though there's some area behind the units, there's not a lot. It's a pretty tight layout, and that was to minimize the cut into the knoll as much as possible. So all those factors were reasons why we created, conditions that would require change to all 3 of the approvals for the project. I think been very fortunate in that a solution has been arrived at that's probably going to look, reasonably okay, and that's going to function. We did have the town engineer's office review the design of the wall. Even though it's a 3-foot wall, it's going to be sitting on fill. So there is and Mr. Malone can explain this further if you have any questions, but my understanding is there's going to be compactation of the fill, compaction, so there'll be 12-inch lifts. They'll be compacted down to a certain degree, so it'll be stable and supportive of the retaining wall, and the fill behind the wall is going to be also compacted in lifts. There's an inspection protocol for the degree of compaction of the fill. All that's specified in the plans, been looked at by the town engineer's office, so I think all that should work fairly well. The requirements and the regulations for vegetation at the base of retaining walls and on the top. My understanding is the applicant would prefer not to put any vegetation on the top of the wall because of concerns with maintaining it. Typically what's proposed is something like a creeping juniper or something that just trails over the top. I'll leave that to you whether you want to do that. That would have to be a modification to the landscaping requirements. If you, I've set it up as a requirement for the landscaping required by the regulations so far. I can go into the details of which conditions would need to be changed, or I can do that after the public hearing is closed, or at the close of the public portion, whichever you'd like me to do. But
Okay, I think it's good for now. Any questions for anyone from Harry? If not, we'll open it up to the public. Any members of the public wish to comment? Mr. Radowski, you're up front, so go forward.
Good evening, Commission and staff members.
either way.
Good evening, Commission members, Mr. Chairman, and the staff members. My name is Matt Radulski. I'm the president of the Branford Historical Society, and I'm here to comment for several reasons. We have standing for several reasons. One is that as the owners of the Harrison House at 124 Main Street, our property abuts this property, and we've been involved all the way through this long slog, as Councilor Pellegrino will tell you. In addition, this property is inside the Canoe Brook National Historic District, so obviously that's federally recognized, and so we have an interest in National Historic Districts being maintained in consonance with the original designs of the contemporaneous houses and other structures at that time. First off, we're very happy at Harrison House that there was no blasting required, because our foundation is approximately, 300 years old, going on 300 years in just a few years, built in 1724. And I will note that the developer did have somebody coming in do a pre-blasting inspection, and we have that on record. But another part of our standing is that we are part of the original grant of the Planned Development District, because the Historical Society and a party, Patio, who I don't think is here, both have separate written agreements with the developer about the development. And as such, we've reviewed the various iterations of the plans over the years. So I reviewed the application at the town planning office, and the concept of a retaining wall is absolutely reasonable. I mean, there's nothing else you can do. Otherwise, it's all going to just skitter down the hillside when you have rain or anything like that. Looking at it and consulting with our preservation chair of the board of the Branford Historical Society, he questioned whether the exact detail of the type of block might be altered, and there were a couple suggestions for that, so that it's not just a cookie cutter development type of retaining block. They've just rebuilt the bridge down on Mill Creek at Harbor Street, and that was done in a way that didn't excite any real anger among the local residents, even though they were replacing an old bridge with stonework. Another place that's closer and would more closely echo the nature of the Canoe Brook Historic District is the garden wall that's behind Harrison House. And anybody can, park there and walk in and take a look at it. I don't have a recent photo of that, but the request of the Historical Society would be that through the town planner's office, that the developers take a look at that wall. That's of types of stone which are obviously native, because nobody was moving stone a big distance back in the 1700s. And that would require masonry, some sort of mortar behind it, and then placement of that type of stone in series. They're fairly flat stones, so it's not like Stony Creek granite. That's a different part of town. That's a different historic district. Let's see. So those were our notes after having reviewed the application and taking a look at the plans and photographs. I know that what they're talking about is standard, but this location is anything but standard, being in a National Historic District. Mr. Chairman or the commission members, do you have any questions about that?
Thank you, Mr. Radulski. Where was the example again that you used?
The garden wall behind Harrison House. So Harrison House has a driveway to the left of the house, and anybody's welcome to drive in there, park there, look at the garden. That wall's shorter. It's 2.5 feet, I'd say. Some parts have mortar. It's pretty well hidden. Some parts don't. But that is exactly typical of a house built in this National Historic District.
Mr. Radulski, in relation to the map here, where is Harrison House?
Right here.
So the retaining wall is way to the right over there. Okay.
Yeah, so we're not going to see this in the summer at all. In the winter, you can clearly see it, but there aren't that many people there in the winter. So our status as an abutter, of course, brings me here this evening. But more importantly, that's going to be a highly visible area when people drive along that street, and we don't want some kind of, cookie cutter type retaining wall. We could see that in the case of, say, Cedar Street, where it's north of Main Street, where they have that giant retaining wall. Yeah, that's kind of typical suburban retaining wall stuff. That's not in the National Historic District, and therefore I think that this retaining wall's appearance should reflect other construction in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I was trying to get an idea of the relationship from Harrison House to wherever the wall is going to be.
We're right about here in this corner. I don't think you could quite see the outline of Harrison House.
Trying to get an idea of sight lines. Okay.
Right. Oh yeah, we're going to see all the back of this, and the developers have been more than accommodating when we've had design notes about the way things would generally appear in a National Historic District. So again, they've been very accommodating and taking all of our input.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Radulski?
I just want to clarify what kind of wall. You said it was like a fieldstone wall with a concrete gutter back.
Yeah, it's kind of medium to dark gray. It's got some flecks of something sparkly, like feldspar or mica. It's just totally typical of what you find in the Canoe Brook Historic District.
Right, but there's no foundations.
I think I'd get killed by our members if I started ripping it apart to find out. I'm sure that there's mortar in the lower levels, and that you could build one with mortar. On the top, it's loose. But yeah, they would definitely have to use some mortar, because it's, after all, a retaining wall. It's going to need a certain modulus of strength, as the engineer determines and the town staff reviews.
Well, I just wouldn't want to require the engineer to have to do something if they can't get the calculations for overturning and whatnot to make it structurally sound. So that was my basis of my question, other than the aesthetic.
Right, I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I know that with the right geometry and the right mortar, that would probably be a piece of cake. There are plenty of retaining walls made out of natural stone as opposed to the interlocking brick.
Right. I'm just thinking that they may need to propose that it be put together in a way that is more contemporary as far as the technology, but still aesthetically consistent with the historic. And if that's the case, I would want to give them the latitude to
Oh, yeah,
do that.
any plan or idea that they come up with, I can refer that immediately to my board. Mr. Maneri, he's not here this evening, but he's been more than accommodating in the discussions about the repairs at the McCabe House, which is the National Historic District contributing property that forms Lot 2 for this plan. And I can see the work's already started for the rehabilitation of that. So he called me, I came right down, we took a walk through, and he's got plans to stabilize that house. And it's going to be a nice rental property, a nice neighborhood.
Great. Thank you.
Are there any other retaining walls around that Harrison house that are around that particular area? Is that why this is being required here, or from the Historical Society? Like, so you can match other walls? I mean, are there?
Yeah, the only other wall I'm aware of, well, along Main Street, there's some retaining walls which are field stone with mortar. That's opposite Harrison House, which again is at 124 Main Street. So if it weren't dark, we could all go down and take a field trip. It's typical New England field stone stuff that they brought in from somewhere. The other retaining wall I'm aware of is in my garden, Harrison House garden. I spent a lot of time there. I'm not aware of others, but there certainly might be in somebody's backyard or something. But again, those would be removed from public view, whereas this will be visible to anybody visiting the historic district.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Radowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other members of the public? Yes, sir.
How you doing? I'm Steve Kanaski from 17 Lincoln Avenue.
Sure. Grab a mic.
I didn't have any, I don't need a microphone.
They need it for the TV.
Yeah, they're yelling at
Or
us.
even use the podium, either one.
Right.
Sorry. Okay, I didn't have any issues until kind of two contradicting statements got said. He said there was no blasting. Mr. Pellegrino said that there was minimum blasting. Someone want to clarify what there actually was and what there wasn't?
I probably misheard.
Well,
Yeah.
I live right there. If there's blasting, people had to be notified, permits had to be pulled, fire department had to be known. He said there was minimal. According to the fire department, they never received any idea that there was blasting. So please tell me what there was. Because I have an issue with that because I live right there, and it's kind of funny. Over the past 5 months, I got some water in my basement. No one showed up my property. My family has lived there for 70 years. So someone needs to tell me now, was there blasting or was there not blasting?
And Mr. Kanowski, what's your address?
17 Lincoln Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
I'm right behind Richlands.
Great.
I kind of need an answer because if you did that, you got to pull the permits. You have to contact the fire marshal. You have to do a complete inspection of every house within a certain radius. No one came to my property. He said that there was a pre-inspection done on his property. I'm there. No one came to my house. So now I have an issue that if this happened, I would like everything to halt, it to be investigated, why it wasn't done, and to figure out what's going on and why it wasn't done properly. If I'm wrong this is my first time in one of these little forays, so I apologize. But until I heard that, I have some serious issues now. Because what else is being done that wasn't told or wasn't pulled? What other issues are going to arise? I just have some really big concerns, and I think for a town entity like this, for someone to say something, it's confusing. I live right there. If something was done without my knowledge, that's an issue. And it needs to be addressed, and I would like an answer sooner rather than later, because now my property has issues, and I didn't know what it was from. And all of a sudden, this is what the Mr. Pellegrino said, the lawyer for the people doing the building.
Thank you. We'll ask the applicant to address those questions.
Thank you very much.
Are there other members of the public wish to comment? Yes, Ms. Wyatt?
Good evening. J.C. Wyatt, 84 East Main Street in Branford, Connecticut. I just want to put a 2 cents into there. Actually, I was a witness of a blasting over at the Aldi site when they're building bank. The actual bang and explosion, I was actually on the road and felt it from my car. When I went home that night, my pictures on my wall were on the floor. So if it may have not been from this site, it could have been from the blasting from that site across over the area. So I just want to bring that out from that point of view as a witness and knowing about the blasting.
Thank
And
you.
secondly about it is the stone walls, being in the historic district and being on the Historic Society, being the vice president for years, we dealt with this area and understanding this development. This development they're not, on my favorite of anything I'm seeing, but on the actual veneer walls, obviously you do need to build it with concrete block, you do need the actual mortar. You can do the basics of building technology of today, and then using a very Victorian and a very stone-looking ledge stone that could actually match into there too. So there is ways around that actual question. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wish to comment? Seeing none, is the applicant, can you respond to some of the public comments? There are,
Looks like the attorney was trying to contact somebody.
oh,
He might not be ready.
Mr. Pellegrino, are you ready, or do you need some additional time or something, or?
I was able to confirm with Mr. Maneri that there was no blasting. So I apologize for misunderstanding that there was minimum blasting. There was no blasting. And the approvals all required certain requirements, pulling of permits, pre-blast surveys in the event that there was blasting. What's different to the Historical Society than other property owners specifically is that we have a written agreement with them that is above and beyond what is required by the permits. And so there was a pre-blast survey that was conducted. However, it was ultimately determined when the site work began that there was no need for blasting. So I apologize for saying minimal. I should have said 0. Confirmed with our client that there was no blasting needed in any other areas. I knew that there was no blasting needed in this particular area. I just wasn't sure that in all areas there was not the need for blasting.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Marcy has a question.
Probably more for the engineer. Could you perhaps elaborate on how the grading activity might alter or affect the subsurface water in the area and how far that might travel relative to Mr. Kineski's house?
I don't know the elevation of our site in relation to that gentleman's home, but I don't think we've encountered groundwater or we don't have significant excavation below the elevations that are present at the road, for instance. While we cut into the hillside, we did not really change the nature of the groundwater in the area, et cetera, because the site, we basically leveled that out even with the elevation of the road and then worked up from there. So it's very unlikely that we would be doing anything with the earthwork there that would have any impact on any of the surrounding properties from a groundwater standpoint.
So I'm trying to, create a hypothesis. Is there anything that would have created movement or extra weight? Because my understanding, I agree with you, is that it's surface drainage that might be affected. Is it possible that there could be more surface water headed in his direction and the water's had changed? Or
Based on my understanding where his home is, I don't believe that's possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Were you guys going to address the Historical Society question about the fieldstone
of the
natural
wall.
stone, field stone in the retaining wall.
Well, we can try and address it. I mean, this is really a small wall. It sits behind these units. It's really a backyard wall. It won't be very visible by almost anyone else, even anyone driving by, because it's going to sit up about 10 feet above the elevation of the road. And just looking up there, you'll probably look past it from any nearby area. It won't be visible from the Historic Society from this side here. You just won't see it. That having been said, and you know, I don't think the applicant is opposed to trying to be flexible in terms of the type of wall. I'd like to stay with a modular block wall if possible. It's much more easy to construct, and it is behind these units, so it gets a little harder to come back there and put concrete footings in and things like that back there. And so it's nice to use something that you can build more manually, where you excavate down a couple of feet, put some stone down, and build a wall up. It's a little more flexible, so it moves a little bit if there's a little movement, et cetera. So our desire is to use this type of wall. We're happy to, if the commission's, if it's acceptable, look at alternative surfaces that might mimic more the appearance of more of the historic rock in the area. We don't want to be inflexible, but if we can't stick with a modular block wall, we prefer that. It's nothing from an engineering standpoint that would suggest we can't do exactly what you're saying. We could do a wall that's mortared with a footing, and it's only 3 feet high. It can be engineered. This is not complicated or difficult. So we really defer to the commission. If the commission feels strongly that that's going to be preferable, then we would defer to that. It'll be a little more difficult, obviously more costly, a little more difficult to get concrete up there, et cetera. If we can stick with a modular type of wall and the commission's acceptable, I don't think many people will see it except the people at the home, and they are attractive. And then we would try and work to find only the few people in these homes will actually see the wall. I think they're attractive, but that's a personal thing. I think we would work to try and find the surface of the wall that would more mimic the natural stone, if that's acceptable.
Okay, I'm seeing a few nods from Mr. Brodowski. So we could use the modular wall, but we would want to get a more acceptable type of stone in accordance with the historic.
There are a lot of options. We'd have to work and see exactly what you're looking at and see what we can do to mimic that as closely as possible.
Okay. Okay. Further questions from anyone? Did you have anything further, Mr. Pellegrino?
No, I think we're good. To the extent that there was going to be this weeping landscaping, if that was your inclination, that's going to kind of ultimately is going to cover the face of this wall anyhow, was the only other thought I had. But I'll stick with John's response. I think we're willing to work with the modular system, get a material that works for the Historical Society, either way.
From a landscaping perspective, it appears to me you're 5 to 10 feet from the existing tree line. Is that accurate? And it's a mature tree line?
Yes.
And, you know, I don't necessarily, this is just my personal opinion, if it's a mature tree line, I think there'll be some reestablishment along the edge. You could certainly do some stuff along the tree line to establish, to make it maintenance free, but I don't see the need to plant anything overhanging the wall necessarily. I would just be more interested, me personally, about restoring that edge. I don't know if the Historic Society has an opinion one way or the other, but I just thought I'd offer that.
Okay. Mr. Radowski, did you have an opinion about the landscaping component?
No, whatever the commission thinks is best. I mean, that trailing stuff or creeping stuff usually looks great, and that would if you determine that modular is the only way to go for a solid engineering reason, as opposed to the cost or something, then definitely having some sort of trailing juniper or something would help reduce that. I mean, but my thought is this retaining wall is going to be there long after we're all gone. So I think it ought to be done right the first time, so that it really fits in with the historic district where some of the houses date from the 1600s.
Okay.
Right, but I think our understanding is that they could use a modular type of wall, but use the components would be historically compatible.
If the commission can make, approval of everything else sounds great to the Historical Society. We've discussed it in depth. If we could have the design review on that, have that noted in the approval.
Sure.
Again, Mr. Maneri called me, and 30 minutes later, I was down at the McCabe house to look with him.
Okay.
Very flexible.
Sure. Marcy?
My understanding of these fieldstone types of walls is that historically they were typically used to divide, they were excess stones that got stacked in fields to separate either property lines or fields or other, and they weren't necessarily used in a garden application to have overhanging plants and decorative items. So if we're worried about the historical, I think recommend that the landscape architect or whoever review what was commonplace for the area with the walls and try to replicate that either at the woodland edge or along the wall. If that was agreeable to everybody, that would make sense. It's not a garden. He's trying to bring it back to be historically consistent with the landscape. So the planting should reflect that.
Right. Oh, sorry. Just like. Right.
So if there's some basis that he can find because to me, if we're creating a wall, even though it has a function to hold the grade back,
Yep.
traditionally what happened is you would have these field walls running through the woods. There weren't ornamental plants. There certainly weren't non-native plants that were along those walls.
Right.
So.
Right. Or hedgerows or
And you're referring to the landscaping?
The landscaping portion around the wall. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe I'll throw something out here. I was going to have to suggest some wording changes to add requirement for the landscape along the wall anyway, so I think that we wouldn't need to change. We would simply need to add a finding in that you're granting a modification per 6.3, whatever it is. I can't remember the section. I'm going to look it up. Also, I've scribbled some wording here about the wall design. So we could add another sub-petition, I'll tell you which number it would be, to the existing approval that would say, modify the selection of material to be used in constructing the wall to create a finished appearance similar to a natural rock wall to the satisfaction of, could be myself or the Planning and Zoning Commission. Implicitly, I could state publicly, I would solicit the opinion of the Branford Historical Society. If that's acceptable to everyone, we can do it that way.
Sure.
If I could add to that, Mr. Smith, that Antipas is another party with a written agreement about the appearance, so maybe you'd want to.
Okay, so I'll go on the record saying we'd check with her as well, yeah.
She will, I think, have a much greater view of it than Harrison House.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Great. Okay, is that okay?
Since we're still, public hearing's open, I just wanted to say that before it's closed.
That's fine.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments from anyone?
Commissioner Palucci, you're exactly right. Those fieldstone walls were a pile. Those are different from the one that's across from Harrison House, which is like covered with some vegetation. That's like fieldstone, but they did use mortar because it does have a retaining wall function. So in the daylight, people can drive by and go, oh, never noticed that before.
Yeah, it's not a function of the mortar. It's more a function of why they created the wall. Was it for a garden aesthetic or was it for a field application?
Utilitarian.
And I don't know. And I would just.
You're correct about that.
Okay.
Did you have a comment, Mr.
Yeah, I just had a
Kowalski?
follow-up. Okay, they didn't blast. Mr. Pellegrino said that they didn't blast, but they still did all their pre-blast inspections. How far out by code or wherever else does it have to go? I don't know that because if that's the case, I just don't know. And no one ever came to my house or anybody on my street. So I didn't know if they did do that, God forbid they had to blast. How far out should they do? He said that they already did them. So I'm just curious, how far out do you have to go?
Right. Mr. Pellegrino, I think they had a separate contractual agreement with the Historical Society. That's the only reason they did something over there. Because they, not by law, but because they have they've been parties to litigation and so forth, they have a contract, that's what's going on. That's the only reason they did for them and not others.
Okay, that's what I was kind of confused about.
Right.
Were they required
That's
to
true.
do that
Is that
regardless
correct?
of the blasting or grading?
Excuse me?
Were they required to do that regardless of blasting or grading? Just
I don't know
because
what
of
the
significance of the building?
Yeah, I don't know, Mr. Pellegrino, why did you do it if you didn't even have to? I don't know what your contract said with them, but maybe you're just being extra careful or.
Yeah, the Historical Society and the applicant have been working very closely together. That would have been the most detailed study that would have been needed given the age of that structure. So I think that's why it was done. But between the time it was done and the time they would have determined that they were going to actually have to blast and go out and do whatever, I forgot what the actual requirements were in the approval, and I also can't recall off the top of my head the scope of that. they determined that they were not going to have to blast. So they didn't do all of those things, obviously, didn't pull permits with the fire department.
Thank you. Harry,
Yeah.
did you?
Just add a little bit more. There was a blasting plan that was part of the record of the approval of the application. In the approval, there was also a requirement that would be an offer for pre-blast and post-blast surveys to owners of all structures, any part of which is within 250 feet of the property boundary of Lot 1, not the kit house, the new lot with the development. So that was chiseled into it. So.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other questions from commission members? Applicant? Okay, we'll close this matter as a public hearing, and this may be something we can take up in a bit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Attorney, Mr. Preddy is here. Attorney Proto, we're going backwards in our agenda to the car wash application. That's item numbers 2 and 3. 54 and 60 North Main Street, special exception for a car wash. Nick Magnota, applicant, and John and Rachel Persil, and Attorney Joseph Porto Hornish. Are you ready to continue, Mr. Porto?
We are, thank you. Does this microphone work, or do I need it?
That was working.
Is this okay?
Can you give it a little tap?
Good? Okay. So do you mind if I start while these guys are
Sure,
setting up, just to
absolutely.
move things
You
along?
can-
Okay, wonderful. So good evening again. My name is Joe Porto. I practice law with Porto, Parisi, and Caldwell. Our office is located in Hamden. Before you this evening with regard to our representation of Mr. Magnana, applicant for 5460 North Main Street. The commission's familiar with this project, this being the third time we've appeared before you. We were last here in November. The project, of course, is the express car wash on North Main Street, not far from where we're standing. I'm just going to go over some real quick overview. I know, again, the commission is familiar with the application. We've discussed it at length, particularly the revised plan that we submitted to the commission in November. Very generally, Mr. Pretty will give you a little bit more information on this. I can report that Mr. Pretty was at Wetlands this evening virtually and received an approval. I understand the commission would require a written approval. I just wanted to report because that was, a condition precedent, if you will. If Wetlands said no, then I think we would be obligated to withdraw. So we could at least move forward with the verbal representation that Wetlands approved the revised plan that we submitted to you guys a month ago. So with regard to design standards, staff's report, very detailed. I'm sure you've had a chance to review it. All bulk standards are met. It's a business in a business zone. Curb cuts and driveways all comply with the regulations, as does the landscaping. Parking is provided for a total of 3, where we've indicated to you we anticipate a total of 2 employees, so there's sufficient parking. You, of course, recall that we've revised the site so that there's 20 spaces for queuing on the incoming lane, 7 vacuums, those remain. We had a lot of conversation last month about vacuums, and again, the 3 parking places. Again, this is an application for a special exception. The criteria, we believe, are all met. Quickly, the use is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. The use, again, is a business in a business district. It works in the area. The design is attractive. It has architectural treatments that pick up a lot of the cues of this building. The use will not impair surrounding property values. It will not interfere with the neighboring area. The 3 areas that were listed on the staff report that were, I guess, in question had to do with traffic, right? So that is an area that we had discussed the last 2 times we were here, and I suspect maybe we'll have a little more conversation on that issue today. I would note that the traffic report that we submitted at the last hearing was signed by a traffic engineer. Mr. Olinsky is here and can talk to you some more about the traffic report, but the report was signed by Mr. Sullivan, who is a traffic engineer. North Main Street is a sufficiently sized artery. This use will not impact the traffic that's on that road. and Mr. Olinsky can talk to you about that. The parking areas, of course, are appropriately screened. And, you know, the rest of the criteria are all met, the water supply, the sewage, the storm water, accessible by fire. So, again, staff supports the application. I do have some thoughts I'd like to give you in closing, but again, having now appeared before you guys 3 times, want to be respectful of your time. So if there are any questions, or if Jim or Neil, you have anything new to add, happy to do that now.
Sure. Any questions from your traffic engineers here?
So, no, it was pointed out that, I think I maybe misspoke at the last hearing when I said our traffic engineer was present, and it was pointed out that Ms. Olinsky is not an engineer. What I was saying is that the report is co-signed by David Sullivan, who is an engineer.
Okay. What are Mr. Rudensky's credentials?
You're a, why don't I have him tell you directly?
Good evening, for the record again, Neil Olinsky. So my title is Transportation Planner. I have a certificate that is called the Professional Transportation Planner. It's a PTP. It's actually different than a PE license. PE is a professional engineer. I do not have a professional engineering license. But as was mentioned by Attorney Proto, our reports, and almost all of our reports, are signed by multiple people. This one was signed by Mr. David Sullivan, who is a PE. And for what it's worth, I do have a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of Connecticut, but my main focus is more so on the planning end of the traffic transportation spectrum. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any further comments on the entry and exit, or the?
No, I think everything I stated during the last hearing is still relevant, and there's really no changes. I mean, I don't want to take up everybody's time, but as was mentioned, it's really not going to be any impact to Route 1. The shoulder pass in front of the site is wide. Even if when a car is turning left into the site, it's not going to, obstruct traffic flow in Route 1. There's going to be no impact to Route 1. There's going to be some delays turning left out of the site. It is what it is. By and large, a function of the amount of traffic on Route 1 during peak times, but it's not going to happen very often. Quite frankly, it might only happen 2, 4, 6 times over the course of an entire week. Taking it right out of the site is not going to be terribly difficult at all, since we're going to have a separate right turn lane. So when there is a car waiting a bit to take a left out during peak periods, people will be able to, taking a right, get by. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Are there questions from commission members?
I just want
This
to
time,
clarify.
Marcy?
So any impacts would be of traffic leaving the car wash, not on Route 1 proper?
Correct. And I hesitate to say impact because,
Right, it's bad.
there's nothing there today, right?
Any slow ups or?
Yeah, there's going to be some, it's pretty obvious too, but really a lot of the driveways out there that exist today have a similar condition for turning left out. Any driveway that has more than just a handful of cars turning left out of the site, out of the gas station, the in shape,
Right.
any of those driveways that have a decent amount of traffic taking a left, they have the same exact delay condition.
I just wanted to clarify that the delay isn't happening on Route 1.
Correct.
I have a question.
Yes, Master.
Last 2 weeks ago, the fire chief, did you have the meeting with the fire chief? And
I was not at that meeting.
You did. Jim, was that, when that meeting was held, was it specified to the fire chief that it would be 50 cars a day, or 90 cars a day, or 50 cars an hour?
Grab a mic.
So we actually made the appointment with the fire marshal because it's a site plan review, and he pulled the fire chief in specifically to address the proximity of this building to the site. So that was the main concern. and we explained to him the volumes that we think we're gonna be doing there, and the changes to the plan that went from 11 to 20 queuing spaces, and he felt much happier with the plan because he'd seen the first plan, and he didn't think that this facility will be impacted at all by car wash across the street. So just to clarify a couple things, I was just at the inland wetland meeting. There was one additional comment that from the previous approval that they added. There is a tree near the dumpster that will probably end up getting impacted, and so we committed to replacing that. That was the only thing additional that got out of tonight's modification approval. And the only other thing I guess I want to say to kind of reinforce what Neil said, any business on Route 1, sometimes you have to wait to get out, take a left out. A lot of businesses have maybe only 40 or 50 feet to the edge of the road to get out. Our queuing line from the exit of the tunnel to the edge of the road is about 250 feet. So we could stack quite a few cars that need to wait to get out. So the problem would be internal, not external.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think that it's really important. I mean, every other business on Route 1 isn't in front of the firehouse. And as long as the fire chief understands what the capabilities are that this car wash could produce and how many cars are going to be coming in and out, and the fire marshal and the fire chief still consider it to be safe with the amount of vehicles that this car wash is capable of doing, then yeah, I mean, any business, you know, that if it's still safe, then, I mean, you know, it's important that the fire trucks don't get delayed at all. You know, it's more important than any dollar amount anybody can make, okay? So I think that if it was presented to, and if I'm not mistaken, I heard 50 cars a day.
More than that.
It was more than that? Okay, I could be wrong there. I thought it was 50 cars a day at the car wash.
No, to correct any confusion, we're
Thank
talking 50 to 60 cars during the busiest hours, which may only happen the hours 2 to 4 times, 6 times a week. Over the course of an entire day, there'll be more than 50 cars.
Okay, okay. And I just wanted to make sure that the fire marshal and the fire chief were okay with the amount of cars that this car wash is capable of doing. Yeah, I mean, look, if you put a Dunkin' Donuts there or so on and so forth, or McDonald's or any, you know, there's going to be lines there. I mean, but this is a high-impact car wash. It's going to be producing, you know, it could produce, you know, a car a minute. And, you know, if I'm the fire marshal or the fire chief and I hear 50, 90, 100 cars a day versus it's capable of doing a car a minute, I may have a different frame of mind, you know, thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
you know,
gonna
the
make car
impact
minute.
is different right in front of the firehouse, and I think that they need to be aware of what this car wash is capable of doing, and if it's still safe for, you know, the residents of Branford.
Bottom line is he had no concerns about rats leaving the site.
I have another question. So who controls the light in an emergency situation? Is it automatic, or does the fire department turn it red to stop? So, and do we know approximately how long traffic is held up when, but either way, they're exiting right, which is a free open right, or they're exiting left, which is being held by the light. So I'm not sure where the concern is, other than the disruption to the internal aspects of the site, which, you know, that would have to be acceptable to the owner, I would assume, you know, the business owner.
Well, just a question, if in the odd circumstance that there's an emergency, they turn on the red lights, it's this light right over here and the light right in front of it, there's no light technically right in front of this place, right? But the assumption is that no one's gonna pull out because they'll see what's going on, or
Yeah, I mean, fire trucks have sirens and lights for a reason.
Right.
So people hear it, they might even see it, but they slow down, they pull over, they're trying to get out of a stop control exit out of a driveway. They're not going to gut it when a siren is approaching. And it's right here, as you mentioned. It's very close.
Do we know if the queue going towards exit 53 ever lines up as far back as this property?
I don't believe it does. We didn't do that level of detail where we didn't look at the signal. And again, it's a little bit ways to the west. The preemption light for the fire station, even that, I don't have the exact number of seconds that would turn red when a fire truck were to leave, but my understanding is it's only for the amount of time a truck needs to get out. It's a preemption thing. The fire truck, you know, the light might only be red for, you know, 6 to 12 seconds or something like that. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's not a very long time.
On the 4 to 6 times a week where things may back up,
Exiting the site for left.
what days do you expect that to happen? Mostly on weekends?
I mean, weekends, some afternoon, like a Friday afternoon, perhaps.
Yeah, when this road is the busiest on Fridays, weekends.
Exactly. You know, it's hard to predict exactly when, but those would be.
No, I'm asking for your best guess.
Those would be the times, really, because again, it comes back to the times when Route 1 traffic is so busy. That's when it's going to be hard to take a left out, and those are typically in the afternoons.
I totally agree.
And the weekends.
How often is the Route 1 traffic impacted, not by a local scenario, but by a scenario that's happening on 95 and back up there?
Well, those are pretty random, and I don't know how often that occurs.
Right.
And I don't know how you could predict that, or you know, those are largely due to crashes that happen on the highway.
It's not a crash, it's a macro level discussion.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Mr. Porter, do you have anything else before we open up the public?
No, thank you. Unless the commission has any other questions.
Thank you. Any further comments by staff? Okay, let's open up public. Ms. Wyatt?
So we don't need a microphone?
We do.
We're good, we do.
Well, you need to speak up there.
Here, am I good? Okay.
There's one there.
So J.C. Wyatt, 84th Street, Branford, Connecticut. Again, I'm totally against this development. I did get several petition signatures that I could submit to you guys. Really don't think it's going to make a difference, but I did do a historical presentation that I could give you guys on the actual property and some of the historical values to where the house is that used to be on it. But I guess I'm going to say is if you want me to submit the petitions, I can, but I don't think it's going to make a difference because if it's approved by inlands, I don't think it's going to help here.
It's your choice. If you'd like to submit them, we'll review them. If you don't like to, you don't have to.
Okay, so I won't.
Okay.
For the record, how many signatures did you get?
36.
Thank you.
Give it to Mr. Bryan. Any other member of the public wish to comment?
We're allowed to look at that. All right.
Any further comments by the applicant? I believe you said you had some closing comments. Are there any further questions from commission members? Mr. Porto, you have some comments?
Very
Additional
quickly,
comments?
thank you. Yep, well, first of all, thank you all for your time. Again, we believe the plan meets the special exception criteria. The use is appropriate for the area. Again, staff recommends approval. I would point out to the commission, and I'm sure it's not wasted on you, we have one of the town's best, maybe the town's best engineer who worked on this project. I'll put it this way. If Mr. Preedy says this project works, then the site works. We have a traffic engineer who says the site works. We've had a couple of people that have spoken in opposition. I would ask the commission to bear in mind the potential bias associated with that. There were two other competing car wash operators. While we recognize their concerns, they may have been, at least in part, motivated by financial concerns, which they perceive may be impacted by a competitor. So I'll just ask you to bear that in mind. What I would ask you to be mindful of is that there has been no other engineers or traffic experts that have offered opinions that are in contest or contrary to those offered by the applicant's experts. The Wetlands Commission has approved this application on 2 times. Once when we were, before we came to you, and then again as recently as this evening. And we've already talked about the fact that the fire chief has indicated in a memo through staff that he has no concerns with the project. So with that, we're excited about the project, excited about closing the public hearing, and hope that you move favorably on the application.
Thank you, Mr. Porto. No further questions. Okay, we'll close this matter as a public hearing. We will not be acting on this evening. We need to hear from the wetlands report. Also like an opportunity to review what Ms. White has submitted too. So we won't be acting on this tonight. So.
You will take a staff report in as an exhibit, right?
The staff report's an exhibit, yes. Yeah, we have copies of the staff report. Okay, so that brings us then to item number 8, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission regulation amendment. It's the moratorium for cannabis establishment, a 12-month moratorium for accepting applications regarding cannabis throughout the town. This is from the commission. Harry, do you want to summarize that for us?
Sure. This follows in format the moratorium that was established, I think, back in 2016 by the commission. It was the last one and only one, I think, done in my tenure with the commission. So it's another section to that part of the regulations. Fairly short. It's on the back page of the staff report, the last page, the actual text. And just recites the statement of purpose of the moratorium, which is essentially to provide the commission with the time necessary to complete the process of revising or creating new zoning regulations. I'd also say the legislation that was adopted is over 300 pages in length. We're constantly getting new reports of what towns are doing, those towns that are in the process or have established regulations to allow some or all of the cannabis establishments created categorically by state statute. So this would apply for a 12-month period. It would prevent any applications for zoning regulation amendments, zoning map amendments, PDD master plan approval, special permit site plan, and zoning permits, any of which would be prohibited if they're proposing cannabis establishments as defined by the new state statute. Goes on to change some of the, or add definitions to the definitions section of the regulations, defining cannabis as per the new section of the Connecticut General Statutes, and also the various establishments are enumerated by name under the definition of cannabis establishment. And that is essentially it. So it basically puts everything on hold for 12 months or until the commission chooses to potentially modify the moratorium, which you would have the power to do at any point in the 12 months following proper process, public hearing, et cetera.
Thank you, Harry. And I think we mentioned that you have reviewed with us a starter regulation that you had drafted, but you've indicated that there's other towns that have come up with things, and then we had some suggestions to it, and we've had a lot of stuff going on as reflected by our 5-page agenda for this evening. And I think I had pointed out at one point that if we do nothing, if we don't do this, it's allowed wherever retail is allowed. So, and I thought, well, who cares, because this doesn't take effect till June or something, but I heard that Meriden got applications already, even though it's not technically legal yet. They're getting applications, so we should have a freeze on the record. So that's kind of the thinking. So,
I'll just say before, just to complete, I would suggest, should you choose to adopt it, I would suggest an effective date of December 24th, and there's a recommendation and a proposed motion on page 2 of the staff report.
Great. But let's open up to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment? Yes, yes, sir.
Good evening, committee members, chairman. My name's Nick Tamburino. I founded Blue Point Wellness of Connecticut, one of Connecticut's first medical marijuana dispensaries. I was in front of the same committee 8 years ago, 2013, almost to the exact date. And I was approved unanimously. Back then, I assured the committee I was going to bring one of Connecticut's first medical marijuana dispensaries to Branford in a safe and professional environment for patients and the community. Throughout the years of operating Blue Point, we've built great relationship with business neighbors, the police department, and I believe the overall town. We have a proven track record operating in town since 2014 without any issues. The Department of Consumer Protection will allow recreational sales in Connecticut sometime in late 2022. They are allowing one retail outlet per 25,000 residents, which means Branford will only be allowed one. We can convert our license to allow both medical and recreational sales if the town permits its use. I'm not here tonight to agree or disagree with the town's moratorium. Instead, I'm here to assure the committee that if or when Blue Point becomes a hybrid retailer, we will always be committed to operating the business in a professional and safe manner. When the time comes for a decision, I hope you'd consider Blue Point to be first in line based on our ongoing success and commitment to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wish to comment?
Pat Sullivan from Cohen and Wolf, and I represent Blue Point Wellness and Green Thumb Industries. I had a conversation last week with your town planner, Mr. Smith, and I just want you to know that we're here, with our expertise if you need our help. And as Nick just said, if we'd like the opportunity to be able to come in with the hybrid and we're at your service.
Great.
Thank you,
Ms. Sullivan.
Yep.
Any other members of the public wish to comment? Hearing none, I think we can close this matter as a public hearing, and this is something that we can take up in a little bit. Does anyone want to take a break?
Yes.
Yes, we'll take a short 10-minute recess. Thank you. Okay, we'll call this meeting back to order. And so now we're at our minutes. So we have our minutes sent from our November 18th meeting, and I think we're just, if you had a chance to review them, I think we're just looking, we're the 5 regular members here for that, so we're just looking at that. This one, I want to make a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Fred. Is there a second? Second by Marcy. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. So then let's bring back, I think there's 2 items we can consider from tonight's agenda. And actually, so it's items 5, 6, and 7, so I guess we can count that as 3. That's the Sterling Ridge applications, the PDD, the special exception, and the site plan modification. So Harry, and I think we heard the comments were from the Historical Society, Matt Radulski, and that was the main one. And I think you came up with something that would address that, and that seemed to be acceptable to everyone. So Harry, perhaps you can review with us your suggested resolutions.
Okay. I'll go through both of them. The first one is the PDD Master Plan Amendment Modification. That's fairly straightforward, at least a little less wordy. So if you go to this staff report for the zoning map amendment, that's application 2110.3, so it should be in your packet. It does not have plans attached to it, so. On page 3 of the staff report, to clean up essentially the condition language to allow the use of something other than the rock wall, I'm proposing a finding, which is simply what you would have to find to make an amendment to the master plan. So that's finding 1. In issuing this approval, the Commission finds the plan of conservation development has been considered. The application is in accordance with the comprehensive plans. It's basically a zoning map amendment finding. And there are 2 conditions proposed. The first would say that any site plan or associated approval issued subsequent to approval may include provisions for submittal of certifications of inspections by appropriate certified individuals, so get rid of "and", to be approved by the town engineer of the stages of fill lifts and their compaction as specified on the plan submitted for a site plan. So this just tees up the commission, you folks, to include a condition about inspections in the site plan. And I've had a basic cleanup condition number 2. Any conditions of previous approval should be considered modified as it may be considered necessary to address any conflicts between them and the substitution of a retaining wall and earthen slope as shown on the plan submitted with this and the associated PDD site plan special exception modification application. So that would simply take care of this one. And we could go one at a time, or I could just go on. I don't know what.
Why don't you go on now, just in
Okay.
case we have to go back.
Sure. So the other staff report, which is the one with the plans attached, on page 2. Yep, that is site plan modification and special exception for the grading and earth removal. Modification of both those previous approvals. There were several conditions about blasting in the approval, and things you were supposed to do anyway, assuming there would be blasting. So on condition 2, I've added some wording to the end of condition 9B saying unless no blasting is proposed or undertaken, which would allow us to ignore that condition. The same thing with condition 10B, unless no blasting was undertaken. As a matter of fact, I should also point out the last approval is included as attachment 1 here, so we can refer back if you need to. I can tell you condition 9. There's a list of things that need to be done before the issuance of a zoning permit or a building permit. And condition 10 is a list of things that need to be done before any certificate of occupancy is issued. So it's the main conditions. And then proposing replacing the current wording of condition 10C, which currently says documentation to demonstrate compliance with section 68F32, certifying the stability of the rock slope. So that's certainly not needed any longer. Proposing replacing that with the submittal of final inspection reports and documentation of the results of the compaction testing as specified in notes numbered 1 through 5 under the recommended retaining wall backfill inspection intervals heading noted on the sheet of the plans, blah, 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 with the entitle there and the date and the revision date, as well as a final certification that the retaining wall and earthen slope was constructed as proposed on that plan sheet SD6 and in the location shown on sheet GR, just as was shown, presented to you. Of the same set of plans, said inspections may be performed by an individual other than a licensed professional engineer upon the submittal of a written statement from the town engineer to the zoning officer stating that said individual is qualified and experienced. Also proposing a new condition 16, saying that the inspection intervals noted as recommended on the plan sheet referenced above are hereby made a requirement of this approval with construction of the proposed retaining wall and adjacent earthen slopes to be completed as proposed and shown, blah, 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 just to make sure it's all done as per the plan, inspections are done as what was recommended, and so forth. And then we have the new wording I'm suggesting that would need to be, or provide for, require modification of the selection of building material to be used in constructing the wall to create a finished appearance similar to a natural rock wall to the satisfaction of, I'm just proposing the town planner or the planning and zoning commission.
Okay.
And I'm on record referring to the consultation with the Branford Historical Society and the neighbor, Mr. Patio. So that should clean it all up and allow them to go ahead.
What about the landscape?
Do we need to address the landscaping?
The landscaping, the only thing you need to do is make a finding per.
Do you think there should be landscaping? No.
I personally don't feel that there necessarily needs to be landscaping on the back of the wall. I would be more interested in seeing the woodland edge be restored in a with natural native plantings if there are gaps and so forth.
10-foot gap between there and tree line.
Right, I don't think it's something that's gonna be,
3-foot wall.
I think it's, yeah, I'm just saying, at the woodland edge, you know, if it's gonna start coming in, but you don't see any need.
I think eventually it's gonna fill in over time, it's just gonna grow down. So you'd need to grant a modification
And
per
you saw what
section.
the sightlines were, Marcy, it's not gonna be a major consideration.
Well, I think the historical people were,
I don't think they really were
had a
that
preference?
interested in it, no.
Okay.
That's my impression.
So if you want to just waive a requirement for landscaping on top of the wall, you make a finding that you're approving a modification per section 6.3L.
Maybe say that the existing, the existing woodland perimeter is sufficient to comply with any landscaping, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, whoever's doing the motion can say that too, yeah.
Very unlikely it's going to be maintained.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's located.
Yeah, yeah.
Situation there.
Yeah, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's 3 feet, the kids are gonna go up there, if there are any kids gonna jump off the wall, it's gonna be a game, but it's only 3 feet.
Do we have jurisdiction over determining materials in this situation?
I think the applicants accepted the condition. I think you do, because you have, it's in the town center district, so there are parameters about that. I mean, you did not get a recommendation about this from them, per se. They did look at the wall, they looked at the material, they did note it was behind, it was low, it was only 3 feet. Frankly, I think more of the foundation of the buildings might be exposed above grade at the end than the height of the wall. But, where we are, I think you do, actually, under the town center village district guidelines.
Well, I'm asking for 2 reasons, because there's a recommendation from the town center.
Yep.
On one thing, and we're sort of opening the door up to relitigating this, and I just don't want to sow seeds of confusion.
Well, I mean, they didn't get any public comment because they don't have a public hearing process, so there is that. So you did get public comment, and this seems to be a response to that. But I don't really see it creating any procedural problems per se. But I understand what you're saying, that, it wasn't really brought up by town center. They're included in the process to provide their comments to you, but I don't know if that makes design review exclusive to any comments they have or may provide to you during the process. Like, you can bring your own judgment to that. They don't have approval authority, you do. They have approval, they just have approval, ability to recommend approval or not to you.
Okay.
And Harry, on the land, what are we, I'm just thinking the motion, are we waiving, what is it, what section?
You'd be waiving a requirement of, this is gonna take me a minute, sorry.
Is it the excellence in landscaping design one?
Yeah, you in view of excellence in landscaping design, your waiving requirement, I think it might be in 611.
But just to this wall.
Just for this wall, just this requirement that there be plantings at the top.
6.3L?
That's the provision that allows you to waive it.
Okay.
What's the, our jurisdiction relative to, historic districts? I mean, the buildings aren't trying to replicate anything historic in nature, but yet we're being asked to, change a wall construction to look more historic. But,
This is a very old argument. That goes back to when I was president of the Historical Society. Things need to look of the era they were built. If you try to make an ersatz replication of something that's old, that's what you have, an ersatz replication of something that's old. If you want to drag out a bunch of rocks, pile them up and make a fieldstone wall, that's great. That's what they did back then, because rocks were cheap and available. Rocks are still pretty cheap and they're still pretty available. And they still have a certain amount of skill to pile them up so they don't fall over. It's a very short wall. You're dealing with a lot of mass. It's not a big deal.
I'm trying to make sense of the fact that the building doesn't have any of this.
Exactly.
And yet we're.
Be trying to
okay.
cutesy it.
Yeah. I mean, so. And that's why I was more concerned that the wall be constructed with sound engineering practices to protect from overturning or what have you, you know. I mean, albeit it's only 3 feet, but, you know, should it need to be higher, you know, tie it back or what have you, so.
The locking walls are a better choice because they move with the temperatures, with the, you know, when freezing and thawing and all that, they move without cracking.
Right. No, I agree.
So the section be waiving is section 613C 11, which says landscaping shall be provided at the top and base of walls and on terraces to blend the wall with the surrounding site.
So the surrounding site is woodland.
Yeah.
So I would just ask that
They allow.
any landscaping be consistent with the surrounding woodland area. You know,
More trees.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're
you could leave it-
not gonna plant more trees on the edge, you know.
Yeah, I mean, absent adding something to the plans to require them to plant something, we could just leave it the way it is and note that expect the landscaping for the natural wood line to come down the top of the wall.
That's my point.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go back. Any other questions? Are we ready to go? Okay, so let's go back and we have to vote on the PDD modification, which is a zoning amendment. So we're looking at that one, and we have the staff report. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the application with the findings and conditions and an effective date of December 24th, 2021? And the findings and the conditions are the ones Harry read to us, and they're contained in his staff report that he just read to us, the staff report for our meeting this evening.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Joe, and again, it's 5 regular members. Is there a second?
Second, either one.
Second by Marcy. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the PDD is adopted. And now we're looking at the site plan modification and special exception for grading and earth removal. And again, I believe, we can do that as one motion, Harry? Okay.
Yeah, I think on both applications, yeah.
Okay, so, and again, this is the staff report that Harry provided to us also for our meeting this evening that he just reviewed with us. And we'll have someone make a motion to approve that application with an effective date of December 25th, which is one day after the PDD becomes effective.
Can we make that on a,
Huh?
December 25th is Christmas, can you make a motion to have something become legal on a holiday?
Sure. I mean, why not?
That's the day.
Right.
It's not a business day, that's.
Yeah, it's not something where they have to do anything. Yeah, so it's with effective date of December 25th, with the conditions that Harry just reviewed with us, including the new subsection E that he read to us and was discussed during the public hearing. Also with a finding that we are modifying the landscaping requirements in section 6.13C11 pursuant to our authority under section 6.3L to modify such requirements in this case. So someone want to make that motion?
So moved on what you just said.
Right, okay, so we'll give it to Joe and second by Fred. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Joe V.
Joe V,
Joe
yeah,
V.
okay. So
And who
those-
seconded Fred?
Right.
Right, those approved. Okay, and then the next one is our moratorium. And I think our only comment was from the Blue Point, and we understand, again, I think in our draft regulation, we were not prohibiting all. But we just need more time for the reasons, and that I can hear any opposition from that. Does someone want to make a motion? Any other thoughts or comments from anyone?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
sure.
I just want to clarify what the gentleman said here tonight. Although he did not speak for or against our moratorium, did he imply that he would like to be considered as that
hybrid,
one outlet, or the hybrid, yeah? And if he is he also still the medical marijuana distributor as well? So would he be playing two roles, one as the hybrid distributor of marijuana, as recreational marijuana, and also medical marijuana? I got that right?
That's a good question. My guess would be yes, but Harry, what do you read the statute better than me. I mean,
Well, I can't claim to have complete knowledge, but my understanding is he would be applying to convert the existing dispensary to a category called hybrid retailer, which is a special category just for operations of dispensaries, so they can become retailers as well as still dispensing medical marijuana.
My I guess the question would be is, he is a designated medical marijuana distributor.
Right.
And you're only allowed one for 25,000 people.
That's a different thing.
Is there a distinction? There is no distinction between.
No, well, I think it's different. The hybrid retailer, I believe, is just a special category that's only available to existing dispensaries. So there are a set number of those. Those were allowed via whatever approval process the state had. They're fairly limited in number. I can't remember what the number was and how they're distributed. We have the one, so that would be the only establishment that's eligible for this hybrid retail category.
So could the two be mutually exclusive, or?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay.
I think it would be just expanding what happens there to include retail sale for recreational purposes.
Right.
Within the parameters set up by the statute.
And there'll be two allowed in this town.
That's different. That's the two is for retailers without the medical part of it. And they would go through the lottery process. The statute sets up a lottery process for all these establishments except the conversion of a dispensary to a hybrid retailer. That's an automatic process as long as they pay the fee that's set up by the statute. And I'll see if there's a nod over there. I think there's a nod. Okay.
So that process is separate and distinct from the other two potential retail locations?
Yes, correct.
It
Absolutely
could
right.
happen.
Right. Right. And the retailer, the regular retailer dispensary aside, the limitation per 1 per 25 is set up by statute, but that phases out over time. So at some point, I can't remember what the date is, that limitation goes away and you could have
So
more
it's
than,
important to have zoning clarification about where they should or should not be.
Harry, have we had any potential applicants for the town, or are we gonna take any potential names just to have?
Well, I mean, I would-
So you don't get bombarded.
yeah, I mean, I always take notes, but at this point, if the moratorium, is passed and adopted, then that closes the door for 12 months and nobody can make an application. I mean, I could take notes about people contacting us, so forth, but there's almost an economic development, concern, but, we'll.
If we get our final regs before the 12 months is done, we could repeal
Yeah,
this.
you could change it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to just bring up a couple of points on what happens in other states, just so you guys are aware. I was actually just in, where was I?
Come back.
Yeah. No. I was in Massachusetts also, and they actually run their program pretty well. And I think we need to sort of see how different states run their programs. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and there are loopholes in the system, okay, where the attorneys can point out, and I know certain guys that are running through attorneys, so I think our attorneys really need to take a look at how to prevent certain loopholes. Okay, so in Nashville, Tennessee, they were able to get a bunch of loopholes, and they have vendors on every corner, like hot dog stands, and they sell on every corner, and there's nothing that town or state can do about it because the loopholes exist. I have pictures of it if you guys are, I mean, it's amazing. If you go that way, you'll see. That's like a hot dog stand.
That just tells it all right there. You don't
Yeah.
even
So not only that,
That's
but
something to
with
look at.
with the loopholes, there is, I think, opportunities for people to open up marijuana bars. Okay.
Is
Where
that like a cigar smoking place?
correct, correct. So I think what we have to be aware of here is, I'm glad that we have this on the table. I'm glad that we're moving forward on it. I just think that our town attorney has to really take a close eye and find out about these loopholes. There's applications already being submitted. I know that there's one out in Madison for a smoking bar. And the kid's attorney apparently feels that he'll be able to get it open for him. So I think it's smart of us to, set these rules and regulations, and I think it's really important for us to get this together.
But also, it's the need for the moratorium. It gives us time to look and see what these loopholes may or may not be, so.
Exactly.
So it's like the alcohol, right? So you got a liquor store, then you got bars, and I think it's going to be hard to stop vendors and bars with these certain loopholes, and so unless we put things in place in this town, and we keep our children here a little bit healthier and safer. Yeah.
Thanks, Mossman.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or comments? Not then. I think, Harry, you gave some suggestions. I don't have to come up with a motion. It's, Harry's got some text. It's at the bottom of page 2 of the staff report. Someone wants to read that?
Can we read it?
Sure.
Make a motion to approve application 21-11.3. That's, effective on December 24th to establish a 12-month moratorium on applications and approvals for cannabis establishments as defined in Public Act 21-1, and changes proposed to the zoning regulations by this application starting on the effective date of this approval based on findings that the plan of conservation and development has been considered, and that the proposed amendments are in accordance with the comprehensive plan and are consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Management Act.
Motion made by Marcy. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Fred. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. So then, that brings us then back to our old business. Correspondence, we have anything here?
We do. We have communication regarding a cell tower. I believe it's another equipment swap out. Yeah, it appears to be the case. The property location would be 120 or near 120 Brushy Plain Road, which I think is the one up on the left as you're headed out of town. That's all we have.
Okay, great. That brings us then to old business. Items number 1, 2, and 3 are the Summit Place applications that we heard at our last meeting. We had the public hearing on that. And Harry, I think you did send around a proposed findings and conditions with respect to these. Do you want to review those with us?
Sure. Let me note that I did not write up anything for the zoning map amendment to convert, to add to the Commerce Park CP zone, the incentive housing overlay zone to properties known as 5 and 13 Summit Place. That's application 21-9-2. I think you could simply make a motion that you're approving the application. Finding it in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and that you've considered the plan of conservation development in approving that application. So we could do that first. That's just a simple motion.
Okay.
There's no conditions on it.
Do you want to?
And that would be effective on December 24th.
Okay.
Except for the first.
Okay. So that presumes we're going to approve the other two. So maybe we're just going to.
I think this would be the first one you'd have to do. This is
we
the.
would, but let's just go through the.
But you want to go through the whole thing? Okay,
just
sure.
So we make sure. That
So the first one extends the area of the zone to.
That is the rezoning, right?
It's a map amendment.
That would bring us to the next two, which are special exception to actually approve the development, and also Section 6.8 grading special exception. So you should have a staff report in front of you dated the 8th of December, and it's basically just staff recommendation. I would suggest that should the commission go ahead and approve it, they be adopted with an effective date of December 25th, so it'd be sequenced correctly like the other one was. So the zoning regulation would have to come, a map amendment would have to come first. 1 day later, the project development becomes effective. So I've laid out some conditions. These are fairly similar to what was adopted for Phase 2. I just recited all the most recent plans in Condition 1. Condition 2 made all the representations made by the applicant and the representative. Following those be a requirement, except for they may conflict with any other conditions of the approval. Number 3 would require that the applicant submit evidence that they've established all the soil and erosion controls prior to any construction activity. And the sheet reference there is incorrect. It should be sheet SE, not sheet GU. Number 4 is a condition of, and a list of things that should be fixed on the plans, essentially before a building permit is issued. I have sort of a boilerplate lighting condition to evaluate the lights are submitted. We did get information on them. I haven't gone and reviewed it to make sure they're all in conformance with the zoning regulation full cutoff requirement, so I will need to do that. This would require that they all be the soft lights, less than 300 degrees Kelvin, and that all appropriate information on all the building mounted lights be provided, and so forth. Item D would require that these are from a list of outstanding issues by the town engineer, which is attached at the end of my staff report. And that's just a simple one-page memo from him dated December 7th. Town engineer is looking for a repair, replace, and relocation of existing streetlights along the frontage of development as shown on the appropriate sheet in the plans. That all drainage and sanitary sewer structures to be assumed by the town should be precast. That the sanitary lateral at the storm sewer crossing would be encased in concrete for a minimum 10-foot length on either side of the crossing. So those are all town engineer's issues. Item E would require revisions to sheet GU or any other appropriate sheet to indicate the installation of conduit for the future installation of electric vehicle charging stations. The applicant agreed to this during the public hearing process. It wouldn't require the stations themselves, just the conduit teeing it up. I think I proposed 9 spaces, which would be 10% of the parking spaces, which is in line with, I believe, state recommendations. And for the record, this is reviewed by the applicant. I don't have any concern with this. Item F would adjust the light pole location on the driveway going in on the south side of the northern driveway. They threw a sidewalk in at the very end at, frankly, my request, so that anybody leaving the site could walk out to the sidewalk without going up to the end of the cul-de-sac. You could just simply walk out towards West Main Street, Route 1. But they didn't relocate some landscape, and they didn't relocate a pole light that was right where the sidewalk was going to go. This would make it all consistent. There were 3 new streetlights added in one sheet, and they need to be added on the other site lighting analysis sheet. That's item G. Moving down to number 5. This would require monthly progress reports unless on construction and that the erosion controls are in place, unless it's determined by ZO not to be necessary. On the first line, the word basin should be crossed out and the word discharge put in instead. It's because all the water is basically going down that steep slope to a wetland on town-owned property. It's adjacent.
What item was that?
What?
Are you with me here? That'll be
What number?
number 5.
5.
On page 3 of 5.
I was trying, what am I crossing out?
You're crossing out the word basin and putting in the word discharge. There's an existing outlet on the north side of the property, the northern corner of the property. Item 6 would be a bunch of things the applicant would be required to do prior to the issuance of a CO. Number A would be evidence of completion of all the improvements within Summit Place right-of-way, grade restoration, cleaning the stormwater system, sidewalk curbing replacement. B would be evidence of legal merger of the 2 properties, that's 15 and 13 Summit Place. Item C would be evidence of the filing on the land records of an executed version of the document. This was a mutual license agreement the applicant proposed, so the folks on this development is going to be owned by two different entities. So this development, the new development, will be owned by a separate corporation, then phases 2 and 1.
Why do we need to merge them if they're abutting?
Well, you don't need to merge those two things. You need to merge these two properties because it's 5 and 13, one's the Branford Hall site, and there's
Oh,
a
they're
parking
being
lot.
built together.
Those need to go
I see
together.
what you're saying.
That's going to be owned by one company, and then the rest of the development that's already been, basically done, is owned by a different company. They're all Vegetati's companies, but, so they proposed a license agreement so that folks in phase 1 and 2 could use the new dog park on this phase, and the folks in this phase could use the clubhouse and the tot lot. And that's what this is, and this condition required they modify the agreement a little bit so it would encumber all the future landowners of the property, so the whole development works together, basically. Item D is submission of a final set of as-built. E would allow modifications of the floor plans indicating which units would be restricted as affordable units, so that's indicated on paper. They did that before with the other two phases. Item F is a requirement for submittal of the final deed restrictions for the affordable units. That was required in the other two sections. Item G would be submittal of any revisions required to the housing affordability plan. Item H would be submission of additional detail about any exterior mounted gas and electric meters, the screening or how they would be placed with landscaping and so forth, since that wasn't proposed. Item I would be submittal of a stormwater system maintenance plan for review and approval by the town engineer. And this is wording we've been using for several other recent approvals that allows us to, frankly, meet the requirements of the state. We have a general permit to discharge stormwater, so this would keep us in compliance with the new wording on that. Number 7, basically at the end, of pretty much boilerplate conditions regarding any dust control measures. If it's determined to be necessary by the ZO, they would have to be done. 8, any additional signing of new lighting, need approval. Number 9, landscaping must be maintained as an ongoing requirement of the approval. 10 would allow the applicant a little flexibility in terms of changing the designation of which units are labeled affordable. So you could submit a change, say it's not going to be that unit, it's going to be this other unit. 11 would require them to come back to get approval for any additional dumpsters in the property. That could be done by staff. 12 would require written reports about complying with the stormwater system maintenance plan every 2 years. And 13 is if you don't comply with any conditions, the commission could, if you needed to, revoke the approval. So that's it.
Thanks, Harry. Any questions? Okay, then, so let's go back then to the zoning map amendment, which we have to do first before we can approve that.
Mr. Chairman, I think I wasn't here, so I have to.
Okay. Okay, then who's up and has the person been at?
Frankly, I don't know. I think Massimo, it's you. but I-
Massimo, because it was like Harry wasn't here,
Were you at all the meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul wasn't here either.
I wasn't here either.
Okay, so Massimo, you're voting on this one.
Okay.
On these 3. Okay, then, so for the first one, for the zoning map amendment to add to the Commerce Park Zone, the incentive housing overlay zone designation to those properties. Is there a motion to approve this zoning map amendment in accordance with the finding that it is consistent with the plan of conservation and development and in accordance with the comprehensive plan and shall have an effective date of December 24th, 2021. Someone make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Marcy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the zone is in place. That brings us then to the special exception for the use and also for the grading. And that was the resolution that Harry just reviewed with us. And is there a motion to approve those applications with an effective date of December 25th, and adopt the findings and conditions that are in the staff report that Harry just reviewed with us, including the amendments that he made.
So moved.
Moved by Marcy, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Fred. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so those matters are approved.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us then to new business. Item number 1 of new business, Goodsell Point. Item number 1 and 2 are both the Goodsell Point. Those are the, we approved the general development plans for that PDD. That was a marina residential, and now they're coming in with the specific site plan and also a special exception for grading. And we'll probably hear that in January, is it?
Likely on the 6th.
Okay, likely on the 6th. That's item number 3 and 4. 61 Bourbon Drive, that's a proposed PDD for, I believe that's the old hospice / monastery. I guess it's a conversion to multifamily residential is the proposal. It's on Bourbon Drive. And we need to schedule a public hearing for that. Harry, and your thoughts again, or probably...
I'm a little more unsure on this one. I will see if we can pull it together for the 6th. As you noted, we do have a 5-page agenda, an all-time high, my tenure here, of 25 applications on the docket, even though we've just eliminated some. So we need to get on these, but we have only the time we have.
Wetlands or anything first?
I'm sorry?
Does it have to go through wetlands first?
It's gone through wetlands, so it is approved. From what that's approved, Goodsell Point does not have any wetlands approval required, I believe.
Chuck, can you make a motion to just schedule these at the discretion of Harry?
Yeah, that's an open...
We do have a standing motion,
That's-
yes.
that's- Yeah, standing motion.
So I'm just sort of letting you know, but
What they are, so...
Yeah, but 25, I mean, that's...
Right,
yeah.
right.
I'm
Okay.
not sure if it was the same, it's the same application, but this was brought up, what, about a year ago? And we had a tremendous amount of people
Yeah,
there.
we had a lot of
Maybe
people,
longer.
it was a different application, but it was the same area. So,
area.
yeah, there's a lot of...
It was conceptual, yeah, a lot of people came.
There's a lot of interest in that. So, so that's 3 and 4. Number 5 is Branford Land Development, care of Ed Crowley. This is the Stony Creek Brewery for 5 Indian Neck Avenue and 50 Maple Street, site plan modification, conversion of office space to kitchen and add patio. You're ready to, you have an applicant is ready, it looks like.
Good evening, Commissioners. Greg Burton from Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, Tennessee, and New Haven. I represent Ed Crowley and Branford Land Development. Thank you for your time this evening. We have an application for you to modify the site plan approvals for the property of 5 Indian Neck and 50 Maple Street, which is the immediately adjacent property. 2 minor things to accomplish. One is to convert a portion of the existing office space at 5 Indian Neck Avenue to kitchen use to provide for food for on-premises consumption at the brewery. And the second is to modify the site plan to utilize a patio on the adjacent 50 Maple Street as an accessory use for the private docks that are adjacent to the property. Ultimately, this whole area is used for Stony Creek Brewery, but in terms of sort of how to process the approval, ran into a challenge with the patio because it's not on the same property. So this land would be leased. It's part of 50 Maple Street. It would be leased. The Branford zoning regulations require accessory uses to be on the same parcel. So we ran into a little bit of a technical hurdle there. When we went back and looked at the approvals, because we have the existing private docks for Stony Creek Brewery and the patio that's there, the leased land between the docks and the brewery was also approved as an accessory use. So we're modifying that reference in the application rather than referencing an accessory use to the brewery because it's on a separate parcel, an accessory use to the private docks, which are part of the Stony Creek Brewery facility. Because there's no disturbance to the land, no new construction with either of these use changes, pursuant to section 9.6.c.2 of the regulations. We've requested that the commission waive requirements in the site plan special exception checklist for soil erosion control, sedimentation controls, and detailed site plan information. Again, we're not changing anything about the footprint, no new construction, very limited exterior improvements related to the kitchen, and so we've asked that the commission waive those requirements. Yesterday, we submitted by email a supplemental detailed statement of use, which was requested by Mr. Smith. I have copies of that to provide to the commission. Let me provide those to you.
Did you put on the plan where the specific parcels are?
Yes, yeah, we'll do that in just a second. And then this is the page that goes with it. The two things that you're receiving, the first one is the letter that we submitted with the detailed statement of use, which sets out the kitchen use on the brewery parcel, and then as a separate section, the statement of use for the patio on 50 Maple. And then the Schedule A that's attached there, that's just a reference. I just included that for reference. That's the existing approved uses within the Branford River PDD. So that's just included for reference. We're not making any changes to the permitted uses at all. The only thing that we're doing is just stating what uses we're going to be making use of. So in terms of the location, I have the best fan of light up here. So the patio area, the brewery area is outlined in yellow, property boundary in red, and then the blue area here. This is the new patio area that will be leased. It'll be leased by Branford Land Development, leased from Marine Systems, Inc., which is the owner of 50 Maple, which is this property here. As I said, Stony Creek Brewery already has the private dock here on the back of the property, and this commission previously approved the use of this area as a patio accessory to the dock. So all we're asking with respect to the patio is that we also have this patio added as an additional accessory use to the docks. The kitchen area is primarily internal. The changes are all within the building. Normally, we wouldn't be in front of you for a site plan modification for that, except that in connection with the conversion to kitchen, we have to have an exterior vent. We also have to have an exit from that space, and so there will be an exit door outside of the building with a staircase. Actually, Joe, let me hand the mic to you and let you just walk through those things quickly.
Oh.
Thank you.
Joe Seapat, Joseph Seapat Architects. So what we're doing here in creating the kitchen area, we're planning on taking the existing toilet room facilities, the men's and the women's room, moving them over. This allows us to open up some space behind the existing bar area. So we'll be creating a kitchen area here and a back kitchen, which will be more of storage and prep area. And the only thing we're adding, there's a window right here. We're just going to be removing the window and putting in an open grate metal stair, roughly about 8 risers down in this area right here. Will not be visible from the road. Really wouldn't be visible from the water either. Just kind of tucked in, if you know where the bocce court is, it's tucked in behind there. So that's kind of what we're proposing to do for the kitchen area. Just a little drawing of it, like I said. It's very minor.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. I'll come back around to the patio in a minute. Let me set this out and feedback. So for the kitchen conversion, in terms of just the technicalities, area and bulk standards, there's no effect, no change in any of those. There's no change to the outside footprint. In terms of parking, there's none required. Because the kitchen, as part of a restaurant use, the parking requirements is 1 per 75 square feet of patron floor area. So kitchen area is not included within that calculation. So there's no change in the parking. requirements. There's actually a slight net reduction because we're taking away from some office space, which does have parking, but there's no increased parking requirement since the kitchen area is not for patrons. So the second part of the application is the patio. The new patio, again, on 50 Maple Street, that Branford Land Development will lease from Marine Systems. Again, the application originally indicated this as being accessory to the brewery, but because of that technicality in the regulations, we're asking that it be approved as an accessory to the dock in the same manner that this commission approved the existing patio. The brewery, the 50 Maple Street property is within the IG1 zone. So just for the commission's reference, the 50 Maple Street property is not within the PDD. It is the IG1 zone. The IG1 zone permits private docks as a principal permitted use, along with accessory uses. The area and bulk standards, there's no effect, again, for these on account of the patio. There's no change in the construction. The patio is going to be on an existing slab. This is an area that's part of the Marine Systems property currently, so there's no change, no new construction in terms of the structure that's there. There's an existing wall around the property. We may have some minor modifications to that wall to allow passage, but there's no new construction being placed in that area. We will have new fencing, which we'll show in just a moment. For parking, the patio is classified as a restaurant use, as a sort of an outdoor patio. That requires 1 space per 75 feet of patron floor area. 5,200 square feet is the area of the new patio, which requires 69.3 additional spaces. There's already a lot of parking at the brewery property, but that is the requirement. Branford Land Development is leasing the necessary 75 spaces from the train station as shared parking. We note that the Town Center Village District regulations acknowledge that parking is limited in these areas, and that's one of the challenges, and that it encourages shared parking. We believe that having the parking at the train station is an ideal shared parking arrangement because the high use of the train station parking is 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. The high use for the brewery and the related uses there is evenings and weekends. So in our view, this is the kind of ideal situation to utilize shared parking. And Joe, could you, who has the, do we have a diagram of the, do you have a board of the patio area, or is that just the handout? Okay. So I'll provide you with the handout here. This just shows in a little bit more detail so that you can see exactly what we're talking about in the patio.
It's just a blow-up shoot, sort of.
We haven't seen it.
I've got it back.
No, it wasn't.
Is that it?
I'm gonna take one from the middle, is that?
If I could interrupt for a
Sorry,
minute.
Jim just noted, Mr. Preddy just noted that I think that diagram may have been included in the original application. If it was, then it's duplicative. There's no changes to it. I didn't want you to think that there was any change to that, but just so that you can see the area that we're talking about.
Just,
And then, Joe,
just
if
to
you
clarify, the commission did not get the site plans or the application materials sent to them in the packet.
This is the first we're seeing it.
Yes, it's the first they're seeing the site plan, so they did not get it.
Did we submit that?
No, it was submitted. It did not go in the packet. Just wanted, so they're seeing it for the first time.
Okay. Joe, could you provide the diagram there? You can just explain.
So really what we're doing here is, it's the patio itself, there's a existing concrete wall that goes 2 sides of the patio.
Put it up closer to your
Oh, sorry.
mouth. Yeah, thank you.
So there's an existing concrete wall that goes along 2 sides of the patio area, which will remain. We plan on cutting about an 8-foot opening in that area at the end of the bocce courts for just flow of people in case. And then we're keeping the existing building over here, the brick, and you know, stringing some lights on there, tables, chairs, but we're really not changing much of anything as far as what's going on in the space and how it, you know, looks. We'll be dressing it up, probably with some, you know, potted plants and, you know, pretty straightforward.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a quick question? So the patio area isn't in the area by the old Nelly Greens parking at all? It's behind that? I'm just not trying to...
That's correct. So the Nelly Greens area is down.
Yeah, and I just wasn't sure how far that parking went it over and whether there was any, whether you were taking it from that parking or whether this was another area.
No, we're not taking any parking from there. So the parking for this area, again, will be the shared parking at the train station.
Right, but I'm just trying to visualize where the patio is relative to that parking area that's on the left side of Nelly Greens, whether that's in this area or not.
The area inside that wall had always been boat storage in the winter, but empty, or there was still some derelict boats in there in summer, but there was never any parking area in there.
Right, so, okay, so there's a wall on that left side is what,
There's the building wall here.
okay,
And
so
then
it's
there's
behind
two
it.
side walls, so they, you know, they would bring boats in here and the store in the wintertime.
So I'm thinking
And
that
this
the,
is all paved area down here.
and where's the water line relative to the,
The water line's kind of down along here.
right, so I'm probably
It actually
thinking
comes out.
the area to the left, you know, in front of the building is, I'm oriented now, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Nelly Greens is like over here somewhere in relationship.
Right, the building is the barrier, not the parking. So I was thinking it might have been down adjacent to the water more, but it's really back.
Well, so here's the docks here. I mean, so at this point it's close, but then this kind of goes out this way.
Okay. Thank you.
So just as the last technical matter, so it was reviewed by the Town Center Review Board and recommended by them yesterday. Their only comments were just a request that we look into whether the fence area, we'll have a fence that will separate the leased area from the Marine Systems property, just to make that separation. Whether that chain link fence could be slightly lower and also to utilize a black vinyl fence. And so we'll look at both of those recommendations.
Will the area have views of the water? Or will there be parking in front of it?
No, there's views of the water from there, right? There's nothing that I mean, other than the Marine Systems equipment and things that are there. There's no structures.
Well, that's sort of, I'm just, because I don't have a good sense of how much space is between the picnic area and where the docks come in.
Right.
To know whether there's going to be obstructions in front of them, other than maybe boats on a dock.
Right, yeah, so as Jim was saying, there's not very much land in this area. It's very narrow. So just like the existing patio, it's immediately adjacent, and it's obviously much deeper than it is wide. So it's really just this area that's right here. So it's not really much wider than the patio that's there currently. And then, as I said, so there's no structures there. There's just that small bit of land that will not be leased, but will be open. Like I said, unless Marine Systems has boats stored there or equipment, cranes and so forth.
Right.
Chuck, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. The food trucks, will they eliminate them?
They'll still have the food trucks there. One of the challenges with the food trucks has been consistency. And especially when it gets into the winter months, it's very hard to have the food trucks there. Their interest in being there is limited. People don't want to go outside when it's cold. All of these modifications, both the patio and the kitchen conversion, are really both part and parcel of the same motivation, which is that the environment for breweries, wineries, is very different than it was 7 years ago. At that time, Stony Creek Brewery was at the front edge and the leading edge, but lots of other entrants have come into that marketplace. And in order for Stony Creek Brewery to continue to be competitive with those other options, it needs to evolve and to expand offerings to the patrons in order to continue to draw people into the brewery, and and to hire, to get people, to hire people these days, getting people excited about the venue and the options that are offered.
Is the kitchen you're proposing going to serve the patrons that just come normally, or is there a plan to have that kitchen cook food for banquets as well? Because I know they do private parties up there. So will this kitchen be also preparing food for private parties?
No, that's not the intention. The intention is that the kitchen will be to serve the brewery patrons. Most of the events for that type of food preparation, it's usually a little larger scale.
Yes.
This is going to be incidental for the patrons of the brewery.
So is it basically comfort food?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Salty foods, they drink more beer.
He'll be there now.
Harry, do you have any comments or reviews that you want to go over?
Oh, sure. I did not prepare a staff report. Frankly, we're a little swamped. But beyond that, we were having discussions with Mr. Burton and his colleagues about the accessory use question. So as it was proposed, it seemed to run afoul, as was mentioned, of the accessory use definition and zoning regulations, which requires accessory use to be on the same lot as the principal use. I appreciate that this sort of dances away from that a little bit, or a lot, but, and that the commission used this consideration, apparently. This goes back to 2015. In the spring of 2015, right before I began employment with the town in July. And during that time, I believe the commission was holding public hearings in the high school auditorium, or starting to for the Costco application. So don't know how much attention, frankly, the prior application really got without a full-time town planner present at that point. And also the nature of that application, others are in front of the commission, docket. So I'm having a little trouble following the logic of allowing something as accessory use to a principal use, but it's really going to be accessory to the brewery. It's not really going to be accessory to the dock in the sense that, is it going to be limited to people coming to the dock?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm having trouble following this.
I don't have a problem with the concept in general, but I do have a concept with the characterization. If you're saying that shaded area, that new patio area, is an accessory use to a dock, that would mean that only people that drove up in their boat could sit there, and that's clearly not the case here. It's accessory use. It's frankly the principal use of the whole site. It's more outdoor seating for what you do, and to say that just doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem accurate depiction of what it is. And I think what you're saying is, well, you did it before, and I don't remember doing it before, but even looking at that, it seems closer. All that land abuts the water or whatever. This is clearly an inward spot that is just going to be part of the brewery. And I think I have a hard time saying that is an accessory use to a dock. No, it isn't. It's part of the regular seating for the brewery, which is probably a good thing, as you say, for the reasons you said. But I have a problem, twisting definitions and applications to get that way. I think you can probably get that way some other way, but it just doesn't seem real to me, because that's not what it is. It's part of it's an addition to the patio area, to the outdoor seating for the brewery. It's part of the principal restaurant use that goes on there now, which is great. But so that's my problem.
Well, except that the issue though is that the way that the regulations are written is that if the accessory use has to be on this parcel, then what you're saying is, well, you should use this for this use, but it can't be accessory to the use because it's on this other parcel. So you say it's a good idea, but then you leave us without an option to be able to accomplish it.
Well, Harry, is there a way to?
Well, I think the first thing would be, to try to acquire the property, but I think I've been informed that is nothing that is possible, or that the current owner of the property doesn't want to sell the property. Option 2 might be some way of adding it to the PDD through a zoning map amendment, and then using the PDD as a vehicle to create a way to allow the accessory use to be essentially off the lot, but that would only apply to this PDD, not an interpretation that would be applicable throughout town.
Right.
I mean, that might be a way to do it, trying to be flexible and work with the applicant and the ownership situation that apparently is going to exist out here.
And that's not an option. I mean, the owner of Marine Systems wants to sell the Marine Systems property, and they don't want to sell a property that's in 2 different zones. So that's not an option either. But going back to the issue of the use, so the way that a use is determined is whether that use is incidental to and customarily used in connection with principal use. That's the definition. And a dock, I haven't personally been to a dock anywhere in Branford that doesn't have a patio nearby. So the use of a patio, to have a patio as an accessory to a dock, is a customary and incidental use, incidental to a dock. Now, who comes to that area is a different question, right? But if you approve a use, the zoning doesn't control who comes and goes. Like if the use is approved, then the owner can invite whomever they want to use that facility or use that place. Zoning doesn't control who comes and goes. So yes, will a lot of the brewery patrons, be using this area for seating? Absolutely, no question about it. But in terms of the technicality of the regulation, so in the same way, and I talked with Mr. Smith about considering because we're land leasing this land, right? So we're doing a ground lease. That means that we control 100% of the possession of that land. And so, I floated the possibility of considering that as a ground lease, which is different than a lease, right? That's different than if I just lease space in a building. If I ground lease this land, that makes it really no different than my parcel. And couldn't we consider that to be an accessory that's on the same parcel if it's land leased? But the feedback was, well, no, the regulation specifically says a parcel, and a parcel can only be created by subdivision. That's a whole nother, can of worms. And so we went back and looked at the prior approvals. We looked at the dock use. The dock use is a permitted principal use in the IG1 zone. A patio is an incidental and accessory use to a dock, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Now, who we invite to that's a different question, but that's not a zoning question. The zoning question is the use incidental?
The use is not intended as an accessory use to a dock. It's intended as a principal use to go along with the outdoor seating for use on another property. That's just what it is. I think it's sophistry, really, to claim otherwise. I think there ought to be a way to do it without changing the boundary. I understand that. The guy don't want to change the boundary, you're right. Maybe by changing the text within the boundary of defining, of allowing something to be even leased, you can actually do, by changing the text to certain ways, to actually accommodate this situation, which PDDs kind of do. So there may be a way of doing it that way, but I find this sort of very disingenuous.
Well, I suggested that.
Right.
I suggested to Mr. Smith that I said if you look at whether an accessory use in the PDD, maybe the PDD can permit an accessory use on another parcel, but that means that then you're now dealing with the zoning of this parcel outside of the PDD, so that doesn't work either. Again, this is the situation that we've been put in where if we go this way, no. If we go this way, no. If we go this way, no. But it's a great idea. So that's why we came up with, again, this approach I think makes sense. Under the under the definitions of the regulation, we're talking about the use. We're not talking about who comes and goes from there. And a patio is incidental to a dock. It's what this commission did in 2015 when it approved this dock. So one of the other concerns that we heard is that, well, if we do this, if we do one thing here, then we're going to have to do it for everybody else that comes in. We're asking you to do exactly that here. Just do the same thing that we did in 2015 so that we can make use of this area. This is a tough site. No question about it. These are difficult configurations. These are the situations where zoning can be a real challenge because the regulations are very specific. And so sometimes we do have to come up with a little bit of a flexibility, a little bit of a creative approach. This is one that I think is absolutely consistent with the wording of the regulation, and you're not going to have this situation on some other application that comes down the line 2 or 3 months from now.
I still have a problem because the use isn't as an accessory to a dock. That would mean only the dock people would be, it's part of, it's not even accessory to, but it's either accessory to a different parcel and a different use in a different parcel. And I don't know, I just find it hard to say that otherwise. Even that's the intent. That's why you're providing parking for it, as part of it. Because you recognize that it's part of that. But I'm trying to think if there's some way to get you to allow to do it in a way that frankly is real, you know.
What happens when 50 Maple sells and now that land lease is encumbering the use of the parcel? Even if you were to sell that portion or frontage of the docks to Mr. Crowley, you know, you won't have setbacks.
I don't know, that's a title issue, and that's between the seller and the buyer, and I don't really care. I mean, you know, that's however they. But I just want, from a zoning integrity point of view, to you know, of a use that's proposed, which is an addition to the brewery, additional outdoor patio for the brewery, and what you're calling it is
An incidental use to the
accessory use
dock.
to a dock, which it isn't. It's just part of the brewery. So how can we do this in a way that maybe, I don't know. Harry, do you have any other thoughts?
I don't know, I'm just trying to understand better, I think. The property would be encumbered by a ground lease. This is Mr. Anderson's property, Branford Landing's property.
For how long?
On the market. How long is the lease for? If you don't mind my asking.
I think we've talked about 10 years. We haven't done the lease. The lease is, it didn't make any sense to draft a lease and go through the exercise of doing that unless we could get the approval. But the approval would be conditioned on whatever the lease term is. You know, it would be conditioned on that land being leased. And just as a point of clarification, I just want to make sure that everybody understands. There are docks along the riverfront here that are marine systems docks.
Right.
The docks here are Stony Creek Brewery. These are Branford Land Development owns these docks. The docks that are here in front of the land, and then leases the land that's here. These are Branford Land Development's docks. So Branford Land Development is the owner of this parcel here. Branford Land Development leases this parcel, this area here, and Branford Land Development owns the docks that are here. And that's why I'm saying
the docks from 50 Maple?
I'm sorry?
Did they purchase the dock rights from 50 Maple, or are they purchased from some?
The dock rights are included in the lease. So the lease allows us to attach the docks to the seawall.
Oh, so they paid for the docks, but the...
Correct.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Correct. So again, this is Branford Land Development's use of 50 Maple Street. We're not trying to attach our accessory use to someone else's activity, right? That I would agree with you. That's hugely problematic.
They purchased the docks.
Not suggesting that at all,
part of
right?
their
This
capital.
is Branford Land Development's use. Branford Land Development's principal use
is the dock
on 50 Maple Street.
Right.
Is the dock.
Right.
And then we want to use, just as we have this patio, to use this patio as an accessory use to the docks.
It seems odd that they wouldn't transfer the land.
Why couldn't we just either amend the table of use or or something in this Exhibit A or something to cover, abutting land as do it by text instead of changing the map if you're concerned about the map change.
I see what you're saying. So we actually changed the
because you can accomplish
content
through a
of
text
PDD.
change what you can sometimes do in a map change.
Right.
So just put it within the text.
But that would be the text applicable to land in a PDD.
Correct.
Right. So
abutting land within so many feet of uses within whatever by
that have
something.
principal uses
So-
of the
So
primary
the
property.
commission would be comfortable with us using the text of the PDD to regulate land outside of the PDD.
Yes, I think that's
to regulate a use.
Well, that is with the consent of the adjacent owner, with the consent of the property owner. which they have to do if they're giving you a lease.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised
He's
the
already
property
signed,
owner
yeah.
isn't presenting it, not the,
What?
you know, it's
Well,
not
we
the
have
property
authori-
owner isn't the one here presenting this, it's the leasee. Not the
Well, there's
leaseor.
authorization, I believe, by the property owner for you to proceed with the application.
I'm sorry, say again?
I believe the property owner, Branford Landing, has authorized you to execute the application or proceed with the application for land
Yes,
they own.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified
Yeah.
that at the outset. We submitted with the initial application the consent and authorization letter
Yeah.
from Marine Systems, Inc., which is the owner of 50 Maple Street.
Right.
I mean, so I guess my thought on that suggestion is, I mean, that seems peculiar, but that also means having to do a public hearing, a PDD modification, that's a lot of process that's involved in doing that. This seems like a very simple solution. It's a very simple solution that's consistent with past decisions of this commission.
Okay, well, I don't know what you guys think, because I've been talking, maybe you
Can I
guys
offer
think differently. He's made a decent argument. I don't.
No, well, I appreciate what you're saying about integrity of everything. We're hearing this entire application as sort of one thing. If this transaction came in with Greg wearing a different hat and a different coat and maybe glasses with a funny nose on it, and made a presentation just for the dock, without the discussion with taking the brewery
Kitchen
totally
out
out of
of
the
it.
context. And we're gonna put a picnic area outside of the dock. Would that be okay?
Well,
Sure, if it was
Possibly
really
not.
accessory to the dock, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's his argument. I just don't think it's the truth. I mean, that's the problem I'm having, because it's
not
otherwise
section
you wouldn't
there.
put 65 parking places,
it's-
which he admits he has to do this,
I mean, just to clarify, if the commission doesn't feel that the parking is necessary, we're happy to remove that.
Okay.
Well, no, I
Thank you
mean,
for the suggestion.
under that logic, you'd be requiring the owner of 50 Maple to provide the additional parking on his parcel, and now you've got the parking going on a different parcel, which is only indicative of
Well,
what the.
I mean, you've kind of already stated on the record, it's going to be used for purposes that require one space per 75 feet of patron floor area, which is not for a passive patio, recreational, let's sit around a fire pit, or, some other kind of patio use.
Well,
per se.
Unfortunately,
boats count as
though-
parking spaces?
Well, except that, what I'll say to that, though, is that the reason that we use that is because there's just nothing else to use. So, I like that analogy. If we were doing this solely with respect to the dock, and I was looking at the zoning table to figure out what kind of parking I'd have to use, the only thing I could come up with is restaurant, because you have picnic tables there. There's not another calculation that would be more relevant.
Well, I'm saying that the boats and cars, are they equitable? And if the picnic area is for the boats, how many boats are along the dock that would be serving the picnic area? And is that ratio consistent with the same ratio of what would be required in another area for restaurant parking?
And that's why we're adding enough we're leasing these spaces to make sure that there's enough parking. I mean, really separate apart from everything else is just to do the right thing and just make sure that we have enough parking. The shared parking arrangement makes a lot of sense because of the way that the timing works, and so it satisfies that requirement.
How is that land being used right now?
Sorry?
How is that land being used right now?
This land is currently used for boat storage, during the off-season, and during the boating season, there's like boats under repair and just general storage. So it's not being it's not being productively used for a good portion of the year, and it's being used for a storage use.
Well, the building is a boat storage and repair facility.
Right.
Which is for sale. See, I'm a little confused by if it's for sale, what's the impact of some other potential use that wants to come in that building?
Well,
and
it sounds like,
you know,
the
it's like the
potential
tail wagging
lease.
the dog.
Well, it sounds like potential lease would preclude any use by the future owner of the property for anything other than what is being proposed to be used for now.
Just of this area. So this property has been on the market for sale, but it's for sale the entire property. It's been marketed for some time. A sale of property, just generally speaking, a sale of property that has an existing lease on it, that just gets factored into a buyer's analysis. So they know how much term is left on the lease, they know what the rent is under the lease, and so they can plan accordingly.
So in 10 years, the new owner could kick out.
Correct.
That's my point.
And that's why the approval, you know, would be subject to the lease. I mean, it's conditioned, we were submitting it in reference to the lease, and we have no objection to an express condition that the approval is conditioned on it being leased, if the commission felt that appropriate.
Could I make a couple more comments? Take the accessory use issue maybe aside for a minute. We did receive a statement of use. The kitchen conversion from office is, I think, included in the prior established use of food preparation, so I have no real concerns about the kitchen. The town center committee, as mentioned, has no concerns about the change in the exterior of the building. Other than, there was some comments in prior approvals about not competing with restaurants in the area, but it doesn't seem like that's really going to be the case, or that's not the intent here anyway.
Big concern when the whole thing was approved.
Yeah. Getting back to the patio, the existing patio, for example, there was a statement of use, I understand, at that time that said that would be used for basically people sitting in that area or having recreational like cornhole, something like that, which is basically what it's often used for. There are other things it has been used for in the last few years. One is prior to COVID, that fall, there were several performance events with fairly significant numbers of people, activity, noise. There were bands, there was sound amplification, there were complaints. There was an opinion, I think, of staff. We did not go further because, frankly, the start of cold weather and then the pandemic stopped the use. But there was, I think, investigation and examination of whether that was part of the use that was approved for the patio back in 2015. It seemed to us that it was not. But I think for everyone's benefit that there should be a clear examination, a clear delineation of what would be allowed in this area and what's a patio accessory use consists of in terms of uses. The statement of use that was submitted really doesn't say anything particular about what the uses of this area would be. I think it really should, based on the history of what the other patio area has occasionally been used for, and it really, frankly, has caused some concerns by staff. So there's that. The other question I just have was about the parking lease, and is that executed from DOT?
No, the lease is
So it's a
not
proposed
yet
lease?
executed. Again, it's all
Okay.
contingent on, again, it doesn't make sense to lease.
No,
this
I understand
way.
that, but I think we'd have to have a condition so that the approval is contingent upon the lease being executed for the parking and all that.
Yes, yep, no objection to that.
So that was my concern. I don't think this is quite ready to go ahead. I had wished, frankly, it was separated into two pieces so we could go ahead with the kitchen conversion, but that's really integral to the application with the other patio part.
I mean, would you want an approval for the kitchen part and then separate from the rest?
When did we approve a kitchen in the building?
Well, you included
In
food
this
preparation as a,
This is the first kitchen in the building?
Yeah, the
Well-
reason that we requested an approval of the kitchen is because there is an exterior change, because we have to put an exhaust hood, and then there's also an exterior staircase. So it technically is a modification of the outside
When the
structure.
PDD was originally approved, I remember specific neighbor concerns about the kitchens, and that's why they were gonna do the food trucks, and there was gonna be no food in the building, and there was a big
yeah, they
hullabaloo about it.
came in after that,
And now
and they
suddenly there's a kitchen in the building. so
They
it's-
proposed, yeah, they came in after that, proposed a new use that essentially was food preparation. It was limited to basically, I think, a pizza oven ended up going in the end. So this is coming in as basically an expansion of the pizza oven. It was
yes,
framed
okay.
and worded in such a way that it would include this, I believe, in my estimation. So I think that's pretty clear. I mean, I would be, I think you probably should, if you want to act on the kitchen part of it, I think you should probably have something in writing narrowing the scope of the application to just that. And that would happen, in my mind, preferably on the 6th of January, not tonight.
Does the kitchen
To be,
work?
make everything clear.
Does the kitchen proposal work if the patio doesn't happen?
I think the two are independent, you tell me,
Are
but.
they are they
No, I mean,
Could be.
these are, both of these, so there's a couple of things I'd like to address. One is that, so both of these things are related. This is the these are the changes that the brewery needs to make in order to remain competitive in the environment. And so there's not a direct tie between the two, so it's not one and the other, but both of these things are needed for the brewery to be able to compete. I want to go back for a second, just in terms of having a conditional limitation on this patio use to more narrowly define it to seating, and recreational, games, or however we want to, whatever the commission thinks is appropriate on it. We have no objection to that. So the concern about, making sure that this isn't, used for something that's outside of what the commission considers to be appropriate for a patio use, no objection to that. I do just want to say, for the record, that there were the music festivals that were held. We met with all of the town staff, the fire department, zoning staff, the police department. The fire department, fire marshal had a few modifications to the way that the crowd management was working, and we implemented all of those changes immediately. The police noted that there were actually no noise violations. They were actually on site at the time with their decibel meters. The festivals ended before the noise ordinance time. So yes, there were complaints, but we met with everyone, addressed those issues. The minor recommendations that were made, we implemented immediately. We noted with respect to the zoning that there isn't a special event. I mean, this isn't the regular use of the property. Just like any property occasionally has an event kind of use, a festival sort of use. I mean, these are anomalous events. They occur very, very rarely. You're talking 2 or 3 days out of a 365-day year. It just doesn't seem appropriate to consider that to be a principal use that has to go through a zoning process to be able to utilize, and that's what we explained at the time. So I just wanted to just give that additional sort of recollection of the record. In terms of the application, I mean, look, these things can always be kind of broken up, moved to the next meeting. There's really no reason to do that. This is a very straightforward application. Yes, there's a little bit of complexity to it. I just don't see the need to stretch it out. I think that if the commission imposes a conditional limitation on the patio use to limit the intensity of the use, then that should address the concerns, at least, the real practical concerns, the real, operational concerns that I've heard. Each time we come back, I mean, it's more fees for me, engineers, architects. That doesn't suit my client. And I don't want to charge my client for another 3-hour meeting, to come in and do this this is a patio and a kitchen. And I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we're talking about a patio and a kitchen.
With all due respect, we just mentioned a couple of things that I frankly would strongly recommend be written up. Condition on the lease being executed with Connecticut DOT for the parking spaces, to really clarify in writing what the use would be. I appreciate what was said by Attorney Burton about, leaving the proposed new patio area strictly, but that really ought to be, I think, crystallized into writing. And frankly, I'm not sure. I'm still have some of the same doubts that the chair has about the process, and I think it's preferable, rather than approve it as an accessory to the dock, to look at amendment to the PDD language to really make it straight up what it will be, an accessory to the brewery, and to create some language in the PDD to allow that to happen. So,
well,
let me know what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you what you're saying is that I want to add another 5,200 square foot outdoor area to the brewery, which probably good reason, and for all the reasons you said, so I want to stay viable and so forth. But normally, if you just came in with that would require more process than just coming in tonight. That would require, particularly since you're not even on the same property, it's not in the same zone, and so forth, it would require more process of an amendment process. If you had just said, I want to increase 5,000 square feet of my PDD, and just to do that. And there is some history to this. Of people complaining, whatever, about this, and they said, oh, and you added another 5,000 square feet, and you didn't even tell us, didn't even have a public hearing. So I don't have a problem. It seems to me to be relatively fair to say, let's go through the process that would involve a public hearing, because you're adding 5,000 square feet to this thing, and go through that process and do it, rather than kind of what you're trying to do now, which I understand what you're doing, and people, you agree to it, that kind of works on paper. I just don't think it's the reality, because this is another 5,000 square feet of outdoor area to the brewery, which is a good, maybe a good thing. I just, it's the process. Anyway, that's one person. So what do you guys think? Because you can approve it tonight, and you probably won't get my vote, but it's
Sure, but
you know.
and I ask this because I don't know the answer. But do you consider this particular situation, what's the term I'm looking for? It's not one of a kind. What does the zoning board of appeals always do?
Oh, variance.
What's a hardship?
Hardship. Thank you. Would you see? And I ask this honestly.
Right.
Do you see this for a local business person who trying to keep their business going, increase it, whatever, meet competition, that without that parcel, it would create a hardship to his business? And is there anything that we can do, and maybe we can't, but is there anything we can do to help reduce that hardship or eliminate it?
Well, I mean, I am not I mean, if this was a hardship and you wanted to apply for variance, that's a whole, you don't want to do that, I tell you. That's a whole other hearing, a whole other board, another public hearing is required. You don't want to go that way.
It wouldn't meet the legal standard for hardship.
Yeah.
Impact to business does not meet the standard.
Yeah, I don't think it does. And so what I'm thinking though is is there some way of, I'm trying to think through a text change or something to do it. And I'm also concerned because you are adding, this does have a history. There were complaints and whatever. And you're basically saying on a business that we're hearing this for the first time tonight, you want us to approve this, and it's going to be another, it is significant. So I don't have a problem with the public hearing process. I am sympathetic without, to what you're saying, what you want to do and whatever, but I am concerned about the process from our end too. And it just doesn't seem right. I mean, what you're doing is you're adding 5,000 square feet of outdoor space. You're not doing a patio for a dock. You're just, I mean, it's,
I mean, they're presenting it to stay viable, but, breweries are tending to explode. And to me, this is expanding the use to accommodate business growth that's doing really well, which is a good thing, but I don't, I think people come here because of the unique location. My concern is, when we were originally going through it, the size of the building for the location, it was a big impact, and I think maybe I'm remembering this differently, but there was sort of a sense of limiting it to just the brewery with a few patrons, and now it's kind of reverting to a public destination with events and not that it has to be a band or games, but it is a destination. It's a destination for young people. Young people like to gather in groups. Maybe you make an argument that we need more space for COVID safety. But to me, the business is doing very well, and it's turned into more of a restaurant, for lack of a better word, stopping point than a manufacturing facility. And when we originally approved it under the PDD, was more under the guise of to me, the manufacturing aspects of the property. So that's just, it's just interesting how it evolves. I don't really know how that kind of overlays, but my concern is you're stretching into the neighbor's property without owning the land, and maybe this neighbor is fine with it and they work it out with the lease, but what happens when the building sells and the next neighbor, and he's already committed his business plan to that additional 5,000 square feet, maybe that's not a zoning question.
I mean, that's a business risk for the owner.
Yeah.
I mean, the owner takes that risk. You know, all of these industries change dramatically after COVID and in COVID.
Right.
And, you know, and you do need more space even to do the same thing that you used to do. You know, the brewery has always had the celebration room and events. So, I mean, yes, while there was a manufacturing component, there's always been, you know, the individuals.
The indoor
as well.
space.
Well, you want to, what's your preference? Do you want to poll us? We can poll here and see what we want to do, or what do you want to do?
I mean, if the commission wouldn't mind taking a straw poll
Sure.
to see if
That's fair. Let's, Joe, start with you. Joe
Okay.
Chadwick.
If this were a naked subversion of the zoning process, I would be the first to take off my shoe and start banging it on the table and say no. This strikes me as sort of a back up against the wall, workaround for technicalities of a regulation. I don't see a big problem with this. As I said, if he came in with 2 separate applications on 2 separate days, we'd probably not even look the other way. But I don't see a problem.
Great, thanks, Joe. Joe Vayuzo.
I agree with Joe. I don't see a problem. I know technically you're right, but common sense wise, I think this is not a big deal.
Sure. Fred.
I don't think it's a big deal either, but I'll agree with you.
Okay, I think there should be a public hearing as part of the process. Marcy.
I understand the jockeying around and what it is, and I think from my recollection of the hearing, of the approval, I don't, I think it's perfectly understandable why the business owner wants to do what he wants to do and grow his business, but, part of me just feels like the neighbors should have a say. And, I would hate to be hairy once it's in, and if there's some impact that we're not anticipating, because of the, the additional food or the additional people, not have given them that opportunity. And I feel like the text amendment might be a middle ground, even though unfortunately it will be more expensive for the owner to accomplish, but it would, at least we would have done our due process of giving the public their opportunity to respond to it, and we could sort of get a more macro view of.
Is that helpful? I know, I counted 3-2.
Yeah.
I mean.
Public hearing, I'm gonna say public hearing.
Of an additional process that will involve a public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say to that is that, there is a time when a public hearing is required, and that's when you're making a big change to the way that the site is being used, and the statute set out when you have that public process, and to sort of impose a public process when one isn't necessary is cumbersome, and it's what makes development tremendously expensive and growth tremendously difficult. But it's a matter of perspective, and there's different perspectives on that. If that's where the commission stands, then our only option, because we have to find a way to go, although, like you said, the brewery is doing well, but it's got to continue to offer more things to draw people in. So we have to make these changes. So if we're put up against the wall, then the only way we can go forward today is to go forward with the kitchen and be able to do that, to at least do part of what we need to do, then we really don't have any choice.
Well, do you want us to vote on the kitchen part of this tonight?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We would, if that's where we're at, then we would withdraw the patio, and we'd ask the commission to proceed with the approval for the kitchen.
Okay, Harry, can we do that tonight?
I think you can probably do that tonight.
Okay. Okay, let's discuss, the kitchen component, are we okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
It's a principal use on the principal property,
Right,
even though
okay.
it's evolved into it.
So what kind of motion do we have to make to do that?
I think
Do we have to?
noted on the record that
We drafted, the statement of use is drafted in 2 parts.
Okay.
Part 1 is I think part 1 is the kitchen use. I didn't retain a copy. Thank you. I gave mine away. I got it right. Proposed office to kitchen conversion is part 1. So the applicant would withdraw part 2, which is the patio portion.
Okay. we have this, the handout contained the statement of use for part one. So,
That's fine, we also have an application form, so let's see, this, also on the application form for the record, you'd be deleting,
Actually deleting all references to 50 Maple Street, because 50 Maple
okay,
Street is a
here's what it
patio.
says right now. It says, conversion of office space to kitchen, 5 Indian Neck, and you'd be deleting private patio, 50 Maple, and deleting the word both. So it'd be reading conversion of office space to kitchen, 5 Indian Neck, accessory to permitted brewery and tasting facility use, period. Oh, whoop, and then you've got, frankly, I haven't. 14, food preparation for on-site consumption as an accessory use.
That's not accessory use, it's.
we're just.
The food preparation is an accessory use, because the food preparation is accessory to the brewery.
I don't have the list in
Isn't
front
it,
of me.
I thought it was an allowable use in the PDD though.
No,
It's an
it's
accessory
allowable as
allowed.
an accessory use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's already allowed.
It's already allowable.
Right.
I mean, restaurants, it's on the table of uses, right?
It is, but if you look at number 14,
Right.
it's permitted as an accessory use.
Okay. I mean, restaurants and other food service establishments, excluding fast food restaurants, are allowed as principal.
Right, I mean, we
Right,
could
right. Yeah, yeah.
qualify it as a restaurant, but
Right.
we're trying to be.
Okay.
You know, is it crucial that you have an approval versus having an approval on January 2nd for the kitchen conversion? Because I'd really prefer to clear it up. I mean, I'm fine if you want to go ahead. I'll struggle through this and try to come up with something. I think the intent is certainly clear, what everyone wants to do. But,
I don't see why we need to.
all right, let's try to wordsmith it.
I think we can just strike the references to 50 Maple Street. Each reference to 50 Maple Street refers only to the patio. So
All right,
each of
I'm
those
gonna,
references-
what I'd like to do is edit the document and maybe
Yeah,
you just
sure.
initial all the
Yep.
changes and then at least it's on
No problem.
record, okay? Do you know which property is 002.1 and which is 0003? Because I don't.
Hang on.
Look it up.
Okay.
When it comes to the election of officers, you have my proxy. Okay. Chuck, I can't, it's after 10 o'clock.
Okay, Paul, thanks for coming, and we're almost done.
I know, well, you're getting close.
Right, we're getting close. No, we got an
So,
informal
Harry,
presentation.
I know.
5 Indian Neck is 002.1.
Okay. We're getting there.
Chuck, I need to, to the election of officers, I give Fred my proxy.
Oh, okay.
For the record.
Yeah, I think only regular members.
Let's see him. Okay, thank you. Let's see him, Paul.
Easy tackle curfew, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at that. Happy with that?
I think we can also strike the reference to Anchor Reef PDD.
Sure.
Because we're not part of that. That's
Any
not
longer, yeah,
consistent.
that's, right. Well, they're not part of it either, really, but. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's end it.
Yeah. Well,
Crossed out.
Oh, no worries.
I mean, it helps us.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Just scribble something. Blessed it. Okay.
Thanks for doing
And I did that same thing to the statement of use, just cross things out. Okay, so what we did was change two documents. One is the actual application form and the letter attached to it, crossed out the authorization letter. There's a letter dated November 15th, 2021, and modified that to only refer to 5 Indian Neck Avenue and the proposal to convert the office to a kitchen to allow food preparation for on-site consumption. And we're doing the same thing to the proposed statement of use. I crossed out all reference to the proposed patio and just left the proposed office to kitchen conversion. I'll cross out, if you're okay with that, 50 Maple Street at the top, so I forgot that.
Thank you.
You can state in your motion, I would suggest you state in your motion that all references in the plans to the establishment of a patio area on the adjoining property at 50 Maple Street would be deleted or
Okay.
not approved.
That's acceptable, and just a reminder too, that we do need the commission to waive the requirement for soil and sedimentation and detailed site plans, since those aren't necessary for the kitchen.
Okay, so just for the record then, you just confirming everything Harry said, you have deleted withdrawn that portion of the application referencing 50 Maple Street and the patio use on the 50 Maple Street property, is that correct?
Correct.
And, okay. So let me make a motion. First, are we willing to waive the, what is it we're waiving?
The soil and sedimentation, so waiving pursuant to section 9.6.c.2, waiving soil erosion and sedimentation control plans and detailed site plan informational items.
Okay, are we willing to, is there a motion to waive the soil erosion sedimentation control plans and the detailed site plan requirements as set forth in the regulations with respect to this application, which now just concerns solely the proposed office to kitchen conversion?
Yeah, and the sole change to the site is, in the site plan, is the establishment of an exterior egress staircase and the conversion of a window to a door to be able to exit onto the egress staircase.
Right, with Harry's understanding.
And,
Someone
and
make
the
that-
installation of a fan, right, or the
The
exhaust
fan in the exterior wall.
Right.
The exhaust
Okay.
fan, thank you.
So are we willing to waive the soil erosion control and detailed site plans?
So moved.
Motion made by Joe, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Joe. Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we've done that waiver. Now we're gonna make a motion to approve the application. And again, the application only concerns the conversion and includes the additions that that Harry just articulated. So is there a motion to approve this application solely for the proposed office to kitchen conversion, as we've discussed?
So moved.
Motion made by Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Fred. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay,
You
thank
bet.
you very much for your time.
You bet. Okay, so next on our agenda, item number 6, which is the Amazon stuff, which is 6, 7, and 8. That's a zoning regulation amendment, a special exception for grading, and a special exception for warehouse distribution, e-commerce, and fulfillment center. And Harry, we're scheduling a public hearing on that, but I understand the town engineers recommended we get a peer review of their traffic study. Is that correct?
That is correct. You give me 1 second. I don't have the memo to hand at the second, but we did receive a memorandum from the town engineer recommending that the commission require a peer review of the traffic study that was submitted with the applications for the Amazon facility, in quotes, on Commercial Parkway. The town engineer did review the submitted traffic study, and he reviewed the information that was submitted into the record previously for the zoning map and regulation amendment that allowed an e-commerce warehouse to be established in the limited business hybrid zone.
Any questions from anyone? Do you think it's, I think it makes sense. We should do it.
Okay, I'd just like to clarify that consistent with prior practice, what staff does at this point would be to go out with an RFP and solicit the services of a consultant, and we would select an appropriately qualified traffic engineering consultant in consultation with the town engineer's office, and go ahead and get that peer review done.
I'd be curious as far as how many trucks or how much traffic is coming from the east side, which would have to get off exit 54.
Yeah, because of
going down North
the
Main Street.
limitations of exit 53.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other side is no brainer, but I'm wondering how much traffic is gonna be coming down North Main Street.
Yep, yep.
Can they get a car wash?
Okay. Harry, do you need a motion or is it consensus? or what?
I think a motion's probably appropriate.
Someone make
if
a
you
motion to
Require peer
request
review?
a peer review to review the applicant's traffic study. So moved by Marcy, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Joe. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's done. So now, item number 9 under new business is withdrawn.
Number 9 is withdrawn.
On the Amazon, we'll schedule a public hearing in some probably.
Yeah, I mean, I will take into account the time frame for the peer review and be consulting with the applicant's attorney about that.
Okay, so January, February, or something, okay. Okay, 9's withdrawn, 10 looks small, so we can probably, that's a public hearing, single-family residence.
Yeah, we'll try and do that on the 6th.
Okay, 11 is,
11 has potentially some wetlands involvement. We're exploring that, so that may affect when we can set the public hearing. We'll just do
Okay.
that in conjunction. I'll
We'll
do that with you in
schedule that
conjunction
one,
with you.
ready?
Yep.
The new one is 11.
Yeah, they
The old one.
updated, the one by
That's-
mail.
that's
See,
an old
that's-
one.
Okay, I'll grab
Yeah,
Sent out,
sorry.
right, okay.
We just
Then
should
we
let
have-
you know, it's finalized Wednesday afternoon before the meeting, 24 hours prior. And if we get applications, we just throw them on the agenda. Sometimes we get them that morning, so that's what happens.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yep.
And then 12, 13, and 14 are all new. They're all Metro, the East Main Street.
This would be a phase 2 and probably looking at February, or if we did, just, I can talk about this later when we get further down the agenda, a possible 3rd meeting in January if it seems warranted and the commission wants to do it as a special meeting, just to catch up with the application load, frankly, and so you're not going, later than now, basically, hopefully.
Okay.
This is for the project that's being built, right?
This is where phase 2 of the project's being built, yeah.
Phase 2.
He's, I think, either has under contract or bought the property where North Branford Road, as it comes out, there's the Parthenon, then there's the gas station liquor store. Across the street is a property,
Before you get the feather bed?
yeah, before you get the feather
They
bed.
clear it out.
It's pretty high up in terms of grade relative to the highway, and the access is kind of tricky, but as you go in back, the grades kind of get close.
How much land is under
It's a significant amount of land. I don't know off the top of my head.
Quite a
but it's-
bit.
So he wants to have more residential units.
Yeah, that's another residential building. That's the proposal.
Residential?
Yeah.
We
Similar to
approved
what
it
he's
as
already got approved. Sorry?
All residential?
That's what he wants to add.
The
I
new
assume.
building would be all residential.
Yeah.
So you have mixed use on the.
They-
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. I think it's just solely residential.
Basically, yeah.
But it's in addition to the existing PDD, which is
Right,
mixed
he
use.
wants to put it in his he wants to expand the boundaries of PDD and add more residential to what he's doing, I guess.
Okay, so I think that brings us to other business.
Other business, number 1. Conceptual discussion, proposed incentive housing overlay zone development at 8 North Branford Road. Here we go.
Good evening.
Okay. So we're just gonna pass around a few collateral documents for you guys to review. Okay. So my name is Kostas Sousoulas. This is my father, John. We own the Parthenon Diner in Branford. Been in town for a very long time. I was raised in Branford also myself. I actually building a home in town. No plans on leaving. Love it. It's a beautiful town. So we own the property. Basically, if you've ever been to the diner, there's a back parking lot. Attached to that, there's a lot, which is 8 North Branford Road. And for a while, we've looked at different uses. Currently, there haven't been any opportunities for residential. But we have seen and felt the need with, obviously, you know, especially with COVID, the lack of housing in town, affordable housing. We thought maybe this might be a good fit for us to make a project where we can start to bring back some of the, you know, younger people who are just graduating college, or really a wide variety of working class people in town. People who commute to New Haven, commute to other towns, instead of having them leave, move somewhere else, keeping them in town, spending money in town. So we just wanted to get your preliminary thoughts, you know, on doing something like this, and you know, we think it'd be a really nice addition to the town, and we're right actually in very close walking distance to the bus line, about not even a quarter of a mile from 95 north and south. You know, obviously restaurants, there's offices near us, there's a lot of amenities. We're, you know, close to the center of town too. So we just wanted to get your thoughts on, you know, this sort of project and see what appetite you would have for us to maybe move forward with that.
And it's the incentive housing, so it's
Correct.
the 80% affordable?
Yes. So
Correct.
we do four deeded units. We're proposing 18 units. 4 would be deeded, affordable. And, you know, architecture-wise, we wanted to create something that fits within, you know, the realm of where we currently are, something that's attractive for people to want to live. We would have some nice outdoor space. A lot of the units have their own decks. They're all 1 bed, 1 bath units, washer dryers inside. And, you know, we're hoping to create something that's like a smart building. So, you know, Wi-Fi throughout, a space for people who maybe hybrid, they work from home some days, they, you know, go into work in an office, maybe a space that they can, you know, have everything there. And, you know.
You mentioned the bus line.
Yes, yeah. So the bus line is basically right at the edge of where the diner is. That's where the bus line is. So,
What's the bedroom mix again? I'm sorry.
it's a 1 bed. They're all 1 bedroom,
They're all
1
one bedroom.
bathrooms, and washer dryers inside each unit. And we would obviously show you more in detail the inside units. But if you can see from the layout,
Second and third page,
yeah,
I think.
second, third page, they're open floor plan units. So you know, nice, attractive inside and outside for the building, and you know, we're hoping to create a, you know, nice space for people to live in, and for it not to be a very expensive rent. I own a few multi-families in town, so you know, I always have a good price point. I actually just put one of my units up for lease yesterday. We've had maybe 40 people call. I mean, it's crazy how the housing market's been. My fiance is a realtor in town too, so you know, I see it all the time. It's you know, concerning to us, and you know, being younger in town, you know, my roots are here. I want to keep, you know, expanding within the town, and you know, I think housing is a big problem right now. Not obviously just in Branford, but everywhere. So if there's something we can create to maybe help ease some of that, would definitely be our goal.
So you're just looking for a reaction, obviously?
Yes.
Anything we say can't be used against us? I mean,
So we can proceed.
Yeah, just to see how, you know, how we would proceed.
So this is, technically, there's a provision for a conceptual plan, review in incentive housing district regulations, so this is following that. I've got a couple comments, but I'll wait to hear what the commissioners say.
Yeah. I don't know, if we're gonna have housing, I like having the incentive housing. I mean, I like, you know, we need it, and, this is the sort of thing that we've kind of zoned it for, so. You know, I don't know what, you know, the amenities for open space and all that, I haven't looked, but, I mean, conceptually, if, you know, assuming you wanna put housing there, this, you know, this type probably.
On the surface, it looks like to me, it's 15 units or whatever, it's not, in that area, it's not gonna create any havoc whatsoever, especially with the large project that's across the street that's going on.
Yeah, those rentals are about, is Metro Star rentals or condos?
They're rentals, I think, right?
I believe they're
How
rentals,
many
yeah.
units are there?
150,
150 now, and then.
40 or?
Plus another probably 30 or 40.
Yeah.
That
Right.
was
I mean, you
really
got
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got the highway
Yeah.
entrance
Are you
exit
taking
there,
everything
so.
from Patterson?
I'm gonna build a bridge over the
Yeah.
diner and just walk them orders across,
With a pneumatic tube and just shoot across.
or with the string.
Are you gonna have staff of the diner live in here so they can service the
I'd love to.
patrons from across the street?
I'd love to. And I do think the project across the street will help, in general, the whole area with, you know, business.
Sure.
Of course. And you know, that's, like I said, for us, really, you know, we're still working on price points, but even the units that aren't deeded affordable, we still, our price point's not, you know, the building will be, you know, the finish will be nice, the inside will be really nice, but our goal is not to, you know, charge $2,000 a month, for example, in rent. We want something that,
Right.
you know, people can afford to live, even if they aren't in the, you know, deeded affordable. It's just somewhere that they can call home, that's nice, you know, and that's, you know. our
How
goal
much
here.
have your rents increased on your other properties since, you know, the
Mine?
shortage? Yeah, just in general,
Oh.
you know, 100 a month, 200 a month?
So during COVID, I mean, the
Really
leases
more
that were
rent?
up, me personally, I didn't increase any rents, but, I mean, I've seen rents that, you know, one bedroom in Branford was 800, 900, and now they're 1250, 1300,
Yeah.
it's,
Makes more sense too, they're
yeah.
going up.
exactly, and in New Haven, because I know a lot of people, friends of ours who were looking, you know, rents were up to 2,000 for a one bedroom, or studios, you know, it's a lot of money for
Mhm.
people to, especially for a single you know, one person to afford, so.
How many other one bedroom, I mean, there aren't a lot of one bed, there aren't any, are there? Deed restricted one bedroom?
Probably Summit Place has some deed restricted one bedrooms, but I don't know the number off the top of my head. You know, they're
I'm
going
just-
to be in that
I'm
project.
just thinking as a product on the market, I just don't feel like I see a lot of one bedroom
don't.
rental units.
Really hard to find.
I personally like what you're doing with the one bedroom, all one bedrooms.
Yeah, that's what we, you know.
That's a situation where, you know, it minimizes certain, you know, certain situations that you won't have with a one bedroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Harry, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, the only thing that jumps out at me immediately is, I know you mentioned the bus stop, I guess that's in front of the restaurant.
It is.
I would be very interested in seeing real clear pedestrian connection, and I know you've got to somehow weave it into the parking area, but unfortunately, I mean, if this had a sidewalk all around it and a, you know, a classic kind of entrance into it, that would be ideal. I don't know if that's achievable with, you know, the property ownership, everything else, but at least getting a clear sidewalk protected walkway down. I don't know if you'd be willing to add a couple pieces of sidewalk or something in front to kind of connect it up to the bus stop, basically.
course.
Do you own the place on the corner? Is that part of the same
No,
property?
the,
You don't, right?
so where the diner is and the gas station is owned
That's
by
one.
Don Ron, right?
And then the back pieces.
Do you have a ground lease for the parking around the diner?
So I own the parking lot in the back of the diner? you
Right,
mean?
back, yeah. But the land that Parthenon's on itself, actually.
The land that the Parthenon's on has a ground lease.
Okay, so you could, you have the rights to rework
Correct.
the parking a little bit? Okay, great.
Is this right on the border of the power lines that are there?
No, it's before the power, right at the border, but right before. I don't-
But
I
there's
don't know.
no, is there any other property after that, before you hit the power lines, or you're on
I
the,
think
or
so.
you're the
There's
property
property
line?
between us and the power lines,
There's
I
one
thought.
more.
There was one more strip?
Well, it says Connecticut Light and Power to the north,
Yeah.
but I don't know how wide that property is.
There's a transmission tower shown on the
Yeah.
plan too.
This parking lot that's behind your,
Right.
I assume this is your restaurant?
Yes.
And you got the parking lot. Is that your property there as well?
Correct.
So it goes there all the way across to 139?
Yes.
And the only place you don't have is the corner where the gas station is?
Right. So it's about, I believe it's about an acre and a half, the whole piece of Raven Lake, North Branford Road. And this could be open as well.
I have just one comment
Sure.
I can make, yeah. It's just that I'm in favor of the idea we want to do, no objection to it. I think it's a good idea, actually. I do like the idea it's going to be one bedroom. One suggestion I would say, only from what I've seen here, you know, through the commission, is that, and I know these are just initial drawings, but it looks like an office building. It has no style whatsoever. You go down to Haven and find 10 of them in a row that look exactly like that. The builder, I think that Mr. Smith, who was across the street from you, he came in and, I mean, he made it look like it was something that belongs in Branford, something that was kind of New England.
Yeah.
To me, and I know you get initial drawings, lots of glass and black panels. I don't think it's a good fit aesthetically. I realize it's a diner there, that to me, you know, that has to look like part of the diner property,
course.
look like its own property.
Sure.
That's the only thing I would say was the
Yeah,
way.
actually, I was just talking with our builder earlier, and we were talking about that too, so we're not tied to a certain design, we just,
Good.
you know, we do like what they're doing across the street too, it's
Yes.
nice.
Any other thoughts, comments from anyone? Great. Okay, well, thank you, and
Thank you.
good luck with whatever you decide to do, and,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience with the time frame.
Yeah, no,
That's
thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
That's mid before March.
Okay, item number 2, under other business, is election of officers. Huh. Okay, who wants it? That's right. Okay.
Are alternates allowed to hold the secretary position?
Unfortunately, I think, Massimo,
I'm serious, is that?
No, you gotta, the officers gotta be regular members. And I think only regular members vote for the positions too. So Massimo, you did a poll, what did you find out?
So I did a poll, and you and Marcy get to keep your positions.
I resigned. I resigned my position.
Come on, we couldn't tempt anyone else.
There was no changes.
I told you I was resigning my position.
I didn't hear that part.
Okay. Okay, well, you know, seriously, if someone, you know, this is what, 6 years for me? If someone is interested, I'm not, you know. You know, if someone wants to do it, it's.
You're uniquely qualified being an attorney and all. But anybody can read the minutes.
Okay, well then, I guess we need to make a motion then for the next term for the secretary, Marcy to serve as secretary, and I guess myself to serve as chair.
Do I have to write a letter?
Well, so I don't, that's the slate, I guess, yeah.
Need a promotion.
Yeah, I suppose.
We put you both together, you want to do one at a time.
I think.
Well, I'm all for Chuck and against myself.
Well, no, I guess you could do them separately.
I
yeah,
think it'd be glad to make a motion that Chuck remain our chairman for the next year.
Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
I'll abstain. Okay, okay, is there another motion? I'll make a motion, or someone make another motion. Someone make another motion on secretary position.
Can I make a motion for a different secretary?
No, except for you, you can't.
Why can't I vote, you know?
I'll make a
friendly
motion, we
secretary.
reappoint, or go ahead.
I make a motion that we What do we want to do? We want to appoint Marcy as our, reappoint Marcy as our secretary of the commission.
Okay.
Any objections? Any
Well,
opposed?
we need a second.
Second, yeah.
Second by Joe. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Congratulations.
Okay. Okay.
Nay.
Sorry. You got outvoted. Okay. Okay, so, okay, well,
So I gotta start
Status
coming in
quo.
meeting 10
Carry
minutes
on.
late, so then somebody
Right.
else has to
Carry
read
on,
the-
let's go. Let's get these,
That's right.
rid of these bonds.
okay, so we have a bunch of bond releases, bond things. 3 is a bond release for commercial parkway for Vox Church. Harry, what's that about?
We have a memorandum from Dylan Willett, our zoning enforcement officer, saying he's inspected the property in response to the request for return of the $37,580 bond. And he's, after conducting the inspection, he is recommended return the bond in the full amount of $37,580 to Vox Church.
Is there a motion to return the bond to Vox Church of $37,580 as per the recommendation of our zoning enforcement officer?
What was the bond for?
It was for completion of improvements,
Landscaping?
landscaping and erosion controls.
So moved.
So
Second.
moved. Second, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Number 4, bond establishment for 147 Cherry Hill Road.
I have a memorandum from the zoning enforcement officer, Dylan Willett, recommending the commission approve a bond in the amount of $6,730.23 for curbing, sidewalk, and landscaping requirements.
There's a motion to approve the bond for curbing and landscape requirements for 147 Cherry Hill Road as recommended by the zoning enforcement officer. So moved, Joe. Fred, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Joe. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 5, 20 Parish Farms Road.
Have another memorandum from the zoning enforcement officer regarding establishing a bond for outstanding driveway and landscape requirements. He's recommending the commission approve a bond in the amount of $860 for the driveway and landscape requirements.
There's a motion to set the bond of $860 for driveway and landscape requirements for 20 Parish Farm Roads as per the recommendation of the zoning enforcement officer.
So moved.
Joe, second, Marcy. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 6, 141 North Main Street.
Sorry, where are we now? 141 Main Street.
141 North Main.
Oh, here we go. Folder. There we go. I have another memo from Dylan Willett, zoning enforcement officer. Response to request to bond the outstanding curbing, sidewalk, and landscaping requirements. He is recommending the commission approve a bond in the amount of very similar amount, $6,730.23. Let me make sure I read that right for 20 Parish Farm. It might be the same amount, it's possible.
Pretty strange, to be
Why
exact.
do we have a bond at 141 North? Isn't that?
So I'm losing track, I'm sorry. The last one was 860.
Correct.
Right.
North Main Street is where it's a developed plaza. It's already finished.
It was 147 Cherry Hill was the 6,000.
Yeah.
That should have been $500.
Oh.
Apologies.
We want to, okay, so we want to amend our approval of the bond establishment for 147 Cherry Hill Road to $500.
So moved.
Second.
Second, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're back to 141.
Back to
North Main.
141. The reason for this is there are several changes that have been made to the site plan over a period of time, extending, I think, back to the 1980s. There have been almost no changes in the tenancy in terms of the actual uses of the different tenant spots, but they're proposing a change now, and they've been caught up in the fact that they want to, without coming to the commission for site plan approval, which will require them to fix the site anyway, in order to allow the zoning enforcement officer to sign off on the building permit to allow the new tenant to go in, they need to bond for the differences between how the site is now versus how it's supposed to be per the last approval. Once they establish the bond, they can go back in and they're supposed to add a sidewalk. They're supposed to, the parking lot's all arranged differently. There's landscaping they gotta put back in. So they would need to do all those things, and they can get their bond back, or they could come back to the commission and apply it or change things around a little bit if they want to.
Okay.
So, and this is for $6,730.23.
Okay, is there a motion to establish a bond of $6,730.23 for 141 North Main Street?
So moved.
Moved by Fred, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Joe. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Number 7, planners report. Got any
Planners
reports?
report. I have one thing. Either we can do it on the planners report, or we can add a new item to the agenda for change to the meeting schedule. We inadvertently listed the second and fourth Thursdays in September on the meeting schedule as approved by the commission, which those dates were the 8th and the 22nd. The first and the third Thursdays, the traditional meetings would be this September 1st and September 15th, so I have a revised schedule I can pass out for you. I'm asking that you take a motion to adopt the revised schedule, file it in the clerk's office.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is motion made to adopt a revised 2022 meeting dates and changing the September dates from September 8 and 22nd and replace it with September 1 and 15. You
Made
that?
a motion.
They made the motion by Marcy, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Joe. Further discussion, all in favor? Anything else, Harry?
That is all.
Yes, it is.
I will just tell you, the Affordable Housing Plan Survey closed Tuesday. We had about 800, 900 responses, which is great. See in the next packet, I'll send you what was brought up. Yep.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion made to adjourn, is there a second?
Second?
Somebody second Marcy's motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second, to go to Fred, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good night.
We are adjourned.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.